Good morning and welcome to City Council Work Session, Tuesday, December the 15th, 2020. Tara, would you please call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Luttrell?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Fire Robin?
Here.
King?
Here.
Powers?
Here.
Mr. Sawyer, would you introduce our staff and other guests, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd be glad to. For our guest today, we have Gary Mays, Director of Sullivan County Regional Health Department, along with Dr. May, Chief Medical Officer with Sullivan County Regional Health Department. In addition, we have Maggie Elliott, the Chief Executive Officer with Believe in Bristol, or Executive Director, I think is the more proper term. We also have Steve Cyphers, Executive Director of Bristol Housing, as well as Joel Conkin will be joining us momentarily. And he is the attorney representing Bristol Housing. From a staff standpoint, we have Tara Music, Danielle Smith, Tim Beavers, Terry Napier, John Luttrell, Shane Varney, Tom Anderson, Mary Lee Williams, Chief Wade, and Matt Garland with us.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Danielle Smith, our city attorney, to discuss the necessity of electronic meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all know, Governor Lee has suspended the provisions of the Open Meetings Act to the extent necessary to allow City Council to conduct its essential business by electronic means rather than meeting in person. One condition of meeting electronically is that if a member of staff or council is attending without video, if you're audio only, you should identify yourself by name and position when you speak so the public can be aware of who's making the statements. In order to proceed with meeting electronically, City Council should make a determination that meeting electronically is necessary in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. At this time, if you need to have any discussion of that issue, you can do so. Otherwise, I would proceed to a roll call vote as to whether Council believes that it's necessary to meet electronically in order to protect the welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for this roll call vote?
Motion to approve.
Second. I said it first.
Okay.
You win.
Okay, Tara, would you please call the roll?
Luttrell?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Fire Robin?
Yes.
King?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, we'll receive a COVID update meeting or an update by the Sullivan County Regional Health Department. Dr. May or Gary, whoever wants to go first.
Well, Doc is giving me that look, so I'll go first. But thank you, Mayor Luttrell and Bristol City Council and City Manager Sora. Thank you for the opportunity to come and meet with you this morning and meet with the citizens of Bristol and give you an update on the pandemic situation. It's always a pleasure to attend these meetings and meet with your citizens. And I really look forward to the day when we receive an invitation from the council to talk about something besides the pandemic. So let's hope for that day real soon. We have good news, I think, to report, Mayor, and some very disconcerting news, shall I say. We'll begin with the good news, and that is hopefully Sullivan County will be distributing or administering vaccine next week. The Pfizer vaccine, which has been prominently in the news for the last few weeks, will be received by Ballard Health System, and they will be administering that brand of vaccine this week, is what is scheduled. And the FDA and the process for approval for Moderna is ongoing, and should that receive the same process as the Pfizer vaccine, Moderna could possibly be approved by this weekend, and shipments going out by Tuesday or Monday if everything is meeting expectations and early reports. And we plan to be administering the vaccine either that Wednesday or possibly Thursday. We don't have those dates set in stone yet. So disseminating vaccine is very positive, and it is virtually the only way we're going to get out of the pandemic. And so assuming the vaccine is safe and effective, and we are led to believe that it is through empirical evidence thus far, and hopefully we have good uptake with the vaccine. And so it's very hopeful the vaccine is at this point. So the vaccine will be coming out in small quantities in the beginning, but we are led to believe that there will be sufficient supplies of vaccine in the future. Of course, it always measures against demand, and that really tells us about availability. So all of that yet is to remain to be seen. So vaccine, very positive news. Dr. May can talk more about that. I believe specifically we both attend several meetings and updates about the vaccine and logistics and dissemination and so on and so forth. Our staff is working very hard along those lines, long hours working on vaccine planning and putting together pods and building up our partnerships throughout the community. I think we have 34 agencies and offices signed up to assist us in distribution of vaccines. So I commend our staff and the Tennessee Department of Health for what they've done publicly. On the disconcerting news, I know the last time we were here, I think we delivered a not so optimistic message in regard to the disease burden. Dr. May is going to talk about our numbers in just a few minutes, but the reality is very disconcerting numbers that we're seeing in Sullivan County. And Sullivan County is not unique. There are many other counties in the state of Tennessee, and obviously many more in the United States experiencing the same, but it does impact our citizens directly. Our case burden, our spread is really unlike anything we've seen thus far. There is no indication in any indicator that we look at that we have peaked or we are about to peak. In fact, the inertia of the numbers, our energy behind the numbers tells us otherwise. And so we need to think about this as we juxtapose the vaccine. Vaccine is coming out in small quantities. It will not be effective in terms of deterring the population numbers that we're seeing. In other words, we won't have enough citizens vaccinated to impact the community spread that we're seeing until March or April. So we are going to have to bear the burden of this vaccine in all of the issues it brings for at least 2 to 3 more months. And we are as critical as we could possibly be at this point. So our concern right now is our capacity at the hospital system. Ballard has been sharing that information strongly for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and unfortunately their predictions are coming true. And so when we reach the tipping point with our hospital systems, it'll be a very dramatic change for our communities in our county in terms of healthcare and what's going on. I will end by saying that the citizens of Bristol and indeed Sullivan County in this region can impact the trends that we're seeing. They can minimize spread by following the rules. I know everyone is really tired of hearing the messaging, but that is the only tools we have in the toolbox that will be effective until vaccine is disseminated broadly in our population, which again will not occur until late winter and spring. So the actions that we're taking now literally will save lives, lives unrelated to COVID, lives that be impacted by the seriousness of our healthcare system and the situation that they are in. So I will end on that comment, and if I may, Mayor, ask Dr. May to talk specifically about the numbers.
Okay, Thank you, Gary, and thank you, council, for having us. I hope you all can see my screen. This is a summary website specifically for Sullivan County through the state TDH system. As you can see, we're dealing now with well over 8,600 cases. We've had over 476 hospitalized. That's about a 6% hospitalization rate. And that's been fairly consistent throughout our course with the disease. We are now up to 141 deaths, and the death rate has started to significantly climb, but it also mirrors our numbers of about 1.5%. Looking at the graph, you can see this is where we began back in May. You can see we began with almost nothing. July, we had our first little peak. This was actually the jail outbreak that we dealt with right here with these two little bumps. But you can see basically since then, we've had a steady and consistent rise in our number of cases that we've been having to deal with through the health department. We're now dealing with close to 150 cases per day. Yesterday, we had 246 cases that dumped into our queue to be working on. So moving on down here to the positivity rate. Now that's an indicator of how much disease are we really dealing with when we do our testing. And our testing rate now is up to about a 20% positivity rate. And that tells us that we've got widespread community transmission. And that's really 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 people that get tested are coming in as positive. Of course, this puts us in the red zone. Our R0 is 1.13, and anything greater than 1 says we are continuing to expand our rate of infection at this point in time. Looking at our healthcare system on specific numbers, the hospital had 335 COVID patients as of yesterday. 41 were on the ventilator, and they're down to about probably 45 beds, I think, as of this morning. Interestingly, in Sullivan County, we only have 1 intensive care unit bed as of this morning and 15 beds for regular hospital floor care. So you can see we've got a lot that's going on. Now, we're looking forward in getting started in what's called phase 1A1 for our vaccine. And with phase 1A1, we'll be targeting long-term care facilities, both their employees and the residents of those facilities. Those are being coordinated through a federal grant through commercial pharmacies, and they plan to get them vaccinated hopefully in the next week or so as they get their, next 2 weeks rather, as they get vaccine in. Sullivan County will be receiving an allotment hopefully the week before Christmas. And if we receive it on the 22nd, we'll probably be vaccinating on the 23rd in an effort to get this vaccine out. So in phase 1A1, we want to get healthcare workers that have direct contact with COVID patients. We certainly want to get all those who are testing here at the health department that have direct contact with COVID patients. So that is our first priority, getting healthcare workers protected and vaccinated so that they can continue to serve and respond to the public need. After that, we'll move very quickly into phase 1A2. And in phase 1A2, we'll be vaccinating all healthcare workers, whether they have direct contact with COVID patients or not. Will be a targeted effort to get all healthcare vaccinated. And then in phase 1B, we'll be tackling critical infrastructure, taken care of and vaccinated, and then on down the line until we're vaccinating the entire population that desires to have the vaccine. So for me, this is a really exciting time. I think this is the way that we're going to turn the tide, but it is still critically important that we not drop our guard, continue to practice safety measures that includes distancing and the masking, which we talked about. But the most important safety measure now coming up is during the holiday seasons, we really need to discourage mixing of household groups because this is where we're seeing the greatest transmission. And I know it's Christmas, but this is a time not to give the gift that you really choose not to give. COVID is highly contagious. We know that in family groups, greater than 55% of those in family groups can become infected. Now, we have posted a risk calculator for group activities on our website. It's a great little tool that demonstrates the size of the group versus your risk in Sullivan County. And this is for Sullivan County specifically, that you can look at to say, okay, what is my risk? And the amazing thing is when you start climbing up in numbers greater than 20, your risk goes up to 69 to 80%, depending on the size of the group at 25. All it takes is 25 people to be together, and at least one of those will be incubating COVID-19 and able to spread it to the partners within the group. So this is why we're stressing so much the not mixing of households during these holidays. So we do have hope on the horizon, and we've just got to hang on for a little while longer. Once we get vaccine in the high-risk groups and we can protect our hospital and continue to provide care, then I think the end will be in sight. Gary, did I leave anything out?
I don't think so, Dr. May. Thank you. Mayor, I believe that concludes our remarks, and if it's appropriate, we'll be glad to take questions.
Yeah, I have one. The critical infrastructure employees, I'm assuming that would be school teachers, school staff as well, or would they come earlier than that?
School teachers are presently defined in the critical infrastructure staff. That includes your a lot of like road work, the sanitation engineers, all those that are required to keep our infrastructure operational, and that does include the school teachers.
Now, the estimated.
If I may, Mayor, let me make sure and make that clear, though. That group is not in 1A1.
No, 1B, I think.
That's correct. Yeah.
1B, right. Timeline estimate when that will occur. I know it's hard to be exact, but you anticipate that being January, February, March?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a question we have actually as well. What we know today is that Moderna is the manufacturer that we will be receiving. It needs to receive the emergency use authorization that's in process now. We are slated to receive 1,600 doses in Sullivan County as scheduled. That's really all we know at this point. When we will receive additional vaccine or how much, we don't know at this currently. And actually, of those 1,600 allocated for Sullivan County, we are receiving only 700 doses. So it's going to come out really slow through the distribution. Yeah. And I hope that it picks up momentum and volume to coincide with demand. It could be February, January. Certainly we hope it's soon as possible, but that's really what we know and able to speak to in this forum.
Thank you.
Will the other doses be going to like healthcare providers, the hospital, and if all of the doses aren't coming to the health department, where will they be going?
Sure. Pfizer is getting on the healthcare workers. Pfizer is going to Ballad Health System, and they could be administering vaccine this week. The Moderna on the phase 1A1 healthcare workers are public health staff that's doing the testing and working out as they have been. And it will be home health nurses. It will be school nurses in our school systems. It will be the paramedics and EMTs that have patient contact. It will be law enforcement officers that have contact with the public, and firefighters that have potential contact with the public. Again, in Sullivan County, we've had generally around 1,100 of that population express that they will take the vaccine, and we'll be getting 700 or 600 doses in the beginning. So hopefully we get our second round of vaccine really quick. But right now in phase 1A1, it's about 1,100 people have expressed an interest in taking the vaccine.
Thank you.
So could you also, all of these vaccines require 2 doses, is that correct? And
That's
how
correct.
that, can you all speak to that for how long, what that window is for the second one and how you anticipate that's going to work?
Sure. The Moderna vaccine does require 2 doses. The day of separation, I believe, Dr. May, is 21 days for Moderna.
Moderna, Pfizer is 28, Moderna is 21.
Okay, so that's important. So that, yeah, and for the public, if you receive Pfizer vaccine, you can't receive Moderna vaccine. You have to stick with the manufacturer that our initial immunization is with. So in our case today, obviously we're going to be given Moderna, we hope. And that second dose, the clients will be receiving a card, and we're working on a texting solution as we speak that we hope can be coded and set in place to coincide with our current tracking systems that we have. And we hope to have at least a business card to give clients and or text notification. That's our plans, to remind folks to come and get their second dose within that window.
And I assume that window, so if you can't get there in 21 days, that 30 days could work, or that you have a little bit of time period before you start over again. Or...
A lot of that is still up in the air. It is recommended that you try to get it within a couple of days of that window. However, if you present for a second vaccine later than that, we will be giving it. But a lot of the science is not in on that.
Thank you.
One other quick question. Where we live, we're kind of in a different area where, we've got, 2 towns, 2 states. We've got folks that go back and forth to work on each other's state. That could be police, fire, nursing, or whatever. I'm assuming that, and I know what making assumptions can do sometimes, but is there a coordinated effort between the 2 counties, Washington County, Virginia, Sullivan County, Tennessee, to handle maybe some of these situations where folks are, working in the other states, or how will that be processed?
Well, Ballard will be vaccinating as an entire region, and they'll be getting an aliquoted vaccine for the Virginia side and their Virginia residents. On the Tennessee side, my presumption is that, if you're a healthcare worker in phase 1A1 and we've got you on our list and we've made those contacts, we'll get you vaccinated.
Okay, thank you.
Before we go today, I would like to say to Dr. Mays and to Gary Mays how much we appreciate the coordinated effort and work that you've all put into this, and that the health department has put forward for all of Sullivan County, as well as our region. I know that a lot of the surrounding area has looked to Sullivan County for the information and for the ongoing updates that they have given us. And we couldn't ask for our health department to have performed any better than they have. And I really do appreciate everything that y'all have done. And as I said to Gary some time ago, you've set the bar high for anyone coming along, hopefully not in this situation ever again. But y'all have set the bar very high, and we appreciate all that you've done.
Thank you, Councilman Powers. That's very appreciated. And if I may, Mayor, if I may just take a moment, I want to recognize our staff and our volunteers that are helping us at the health department. We are juggling a lot of balls right now. We have active in Sullivan County, our highest activity rate since the disease began. I think we have close to 1,400 active cases in Sullivan County. We are testing 400 people a day. We virtually had an unadvertised event in Sullivan County Saturday and tested 198 in the span of about 4 hours. We are processing hundreds of labs a day, negative and positive, and making those notifications. We receive about 800 and some phone calls a day from citizens inquiring about testing, inquiring about the disease, what to do, businesses trying to figure out what to do, even yet in this environment, as late as we are in this evolution. I can tell you our staff is very competent. Every day I trust them much more. Are we 100% effective in capturing every phone call and every process that we're juggling right now? Absolutely not. I'm not sure that's even possible. But for the volume of work that is going on in the vaccine front, in the case management front, in the testing front, and then in the public communication front, is unlike anything we've ever done in the history of this department. So our team here is working long hours, and I get many comments. They see our employees at lunch sleeping in cars and laying on picnic tables, and yes, many are exhausted, but they continue to do a good job, and I appreciate them, and I appreciate your comments. Don't mean to make it sound so bad, but I'm very proud of our staff, and I know that I appreciate the council's comment.
Yeah, we are as well, Gary.
Gary, thank you for, and Dr. May for your time. This has become almost a fixture in our agenda for our work session to get this update. And I know while the mayor and I get updates on a weekly basis, I think it's important to share the status with City Council in its entirety and give them an opportunity to have dialogue. But thanks again for what both of you all do.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Believe in Bristol, or COVID update on assistance of food and beverage businesses.
Yes, Mayor, as I think as we were concluding our City Council meeting in early December, Councilman Keene made a comment regarding a National League of Cities virtual seminar that he saw regarding assistance to restaurants. It focused mainly on Tampa. I saw the same presentation in downtown Tampa and some of the things that they were doing in that area, recognizing that Tampa is a different climate than Bristol. Their downtown's different than Bristol. But following that meeting, I had conversations with both Maggie Elliott and Terry Napier about what could we do potentially to create public space and maximize outdoor dining activities, really with the focus on coming out of the winter in the late winter months or early spring months when the weather started to moderate. What could we do to help our restaurants with outdoor dining opportunities downtown? With that conversation, they began some research into the process and came up with a slightly different twist to this. But they looked at a grant program that Albuquerque, New Mexico has implemented to assist their restaurants in outdoor dining opportunities. And so with that was included in the memorandum that was provided to you on board docs. But I'm going to ask now Maggie and Terry to make a presentation based on those findings and then really where we can take this a similar grant program, running it through BIB to assist all of our restaurants in our downtown, and not only in our downtown, but in our city footprint. Maggie?
Before Maggie kicks off her presentation, she's gonna share her screen. But just real quick, when Mr. Soar asked us to look into this, we looked at cities both south of us, north of us, west of us, and the one thing we found is every city does something completely different because there is a uniqueness to every city. And although the simplicity would be to create a singular outdoor dining facility, just the sheer layout of where our downtown restaurants, literally from one end of downtown to the other, made that quite difficult from a logistical standpoint as well as many others. So we came across the New Mexico model, which Maggie will talk about more, but that's what led us to that point. Certainly a lot of ideals that we went through, but I'll let Maggie take you to that end.
Thanks, Terry. And before I actually dive into this presentation, I do want to thank Terry and let it be known that he did this extensive research. So thank you, Terry. And please interrupt me and add on anything that I may gloss over or skip. And thank you all for having us today and adding us to the agenda for this. Wanted to start with, obviously, why are we even looking at restaurants specifically and not necessarily the entire business sector for Bristol? And so these statistics, I think, are very telling. These are both nation and statewide, these first couple slides, but nearly 12,000 eating and dining establishments in the state of Tennessee that account for $14.2 billion in sales. That is a huge chunk of revenue for our state. 333,000 Tennessee jobs that make up 11% of Tennessee employment. And then some fun facts: 9 in 10 restaurants managers started at entry-level positions, and then 8 in 10 restaurant owners started their industry careers in entry-level positions. So we really need to be taking care of everyone involved in the restaurant industry, because it definitely starts at the bottom. I've been there. 9 in 10 restaurants also have fewer than 50 employees, so they are small businesses. Restaurant support. Additional statistics, more than 500,000 restaurants of every business type in the United States make up for in the United States. 87% report an average of 36 drop in sales revenue. 58% will continue to lay off in the next 3 months. And then 17% of restaurants nationwide have closed, and 10,000 just the past 3 months. As far as Bristol goes, just for reference sake, currently 10 days away from Christmas, our restaurants are averaging 30 to 50% down what they were last year, or on an average holiday month and season. So things are bad now. They're not getting, that extra holiday push that a lot of us were hoping for various reasons, of course. Don't need to go into detail. I think those are obvious. But things are not good now, and they are going to be even worse in January and February. And that's continued. Why, of course? So limited indoor seating due to social distancing. As the colder months, of course, those will get smaller and smaller capacity limits. So therefore, there's limited staff due to the slower sales, which means increased layoffs. Outside dining options are limited due to space, materials, logistics, weather, and staffing. And then this is very, very important. 60 degrees is the cutoff temperature for most outdoor diners. So that is, we are very temperate in Bristol, but that's not what our January and February and March look like. We are below that 60-degree Fahrenheit. So as Terry said, as we looked into different options, I just flipped that too soon. There we go. We looked at bigger localities than us, smaller localities, warmer, colder, tried to really get a good feel of what people were doing, and what type of R&D we could do in Bristol and looking towards the March timeframe. We are obviously all unique and have different spaces. I'm going to flip through some of these so you can kind of see some of those examples that people have done. You've got the igloos there on the right or on the left, and then the greenhouses on the right. More igloos, some public space barricades set up, obviously extended dining in that bottom right-hand corner. The igloos look very cool in photos, as we see. So those piqued our interest, and so we were really interested as far as feasibility and logistics for Bristol. So they look awesome. And then here's some other examples of kind of community tent-wide spaces on public space, and then you'll see another extended dining, temporary dining in that top right corner as well. And then here's a few more, everyone having fun in their igloos. We're going to come back to this slide, and you all have this in your memo as well. So obviously we started with cost. These things are not cheap, of course. As far as looking in the colder months, heaters were obviously a big thing on our list, and the supply has actually just now caught up to the demand for commercial grade heaters to be used, and propane fire pits and what have you. If we looked at this a month ago, those prices would be even higher for heaters, and the availability would be near impossible. Is that correct, Terry?
That is very correct.
Okay. So here's some of those examples. Obviously, if we're looking at a 20 by 20 pole tent, what does that mean? There's some examples of that. Greenhouses, those are the fire or the heaters we were looking at, and some different outdoor additional table alternatives as well. So that's where we started, of course. And then we had, of course, our concerns right out of the gate. We initially were, of course, looking at ways that we could utilize public space. We don't have as much public space that is located close enough to the restaurants that really was like a bright spot in our research. It wasn't like, that's it, that's going to help these restaurants here, and then this one can help these restaurants here. So we'll get into that a little bit more, but first concern, of course, was safety, making sure that everything was properly installed, anchoring of tents. Of course, who sets up and takes down these tents? Very labor intensive, of course. As you all know, Believe in Bristol has 1.5 employees. And so if this was a Believe in Bristol project, would Emily and myself be required to make all of this happen? I will tell you, the lack of border bash this season has really impacted my upper body strength. So that was high on my list as far as a concern. But just a little joke. And then where are the tables, tents, etc., stored and transported? Obviously, Believe in Bristol, we're a very small organization. We do have a storage unit currently, but would not have room for additional tables and tents. So that was a concern. And then who maintains these dining areas? We already talked about the lack of, or the decreased staffing that our restaurants are running on currently. If they were to maintain that, it just did not seem feasible to us. Cleaning, sanitizing, of course, between diners, trash pickup, our homeless issues, utilizing those spaces, etc. And then, of course, liability concerns with the heaters being in an unsupervised area. Would we be required to supervise? Where does that staff or volunteer time come? So those were the big things that stood out to us as after we had already looked to see really what public space we could utilize. So we took each restaurant more on an individual basis on the Tennessee side of town. And we found that everyone has a different need as far as their existing space. So some already have some patio space that could really use some heaters or maybe some shields of some sort to block extra wind and extra cold, but having the ability to air those spaces out. Some do not have next to any sidewalk space to be able to expand out, whether it's because their business itself is more narrow, and so that obviously decreases their sidewalk space. Makes sense. So we were really concerned at a kind of one size fits all solution to this big problem. So any other concerns or things red flags that popped up, Terry, before I kind of go into our thoughts on recommendation model wise?
No, I think that was the big ones.
Yeah. We could probably, come up with more, but I thought that's enough. So Terry did find this Albuquerque, New Mexico example, and it's a mini grant program. So those mini grants go directly to the restaurants based on their need. So if they need some extra tables and chairs, if they need heaters, tents, based on what their space allows for, what is their need. And obviously allocation types as well. Our recommendation would be for this grant program to be administered citywide and by Believe in Bristol. We find ourselves to be the natural entity downtown, but would not want to necessarily restrict this opportunity to just downtown. That would have to be, if approved, that would of course have to be approved by the Believe in Bristol Board of Directors, but this is just in recommendation phase right now. And then having a full, obviously, application process and basic guidelines. So to go into our initial thoughts as to what that program looks like, and having a really solid application process is at first glance looking at different categories that businesses could apply for based on their needs. So that would be different levels of funding. So for example, the first, and these are subject to change, of course, but the first category could be a need for extra tables and chairs for outdoor dining, which could go up to $1,000. If we go back to that price guide, just find my notes, so I don't have to go back. So our commercial metal tables and chairs run from $200 to $300 a piece. So that would help those first categories. The second category could be tents and heaters, which could go up to $2,500. And obviously this is all pending approval and available funding. We did find that the majority of our downtown restaurants don't necessarily have space to add extra tables and chairs on a regular basis, but they could really utilize the heaters and tents category there. And then, of course, if they've got additional space, and this would probably be more so for the citywide and outside of downtown, would be the greenhouse install and igloos up to $5,000. That would not go very far, of course, but in my initial notes here, I did write that those businesses would have to provide a site map in order to be approved of those, as well as codes approval and making sure that they're using space that's allowed to them. We would want a very timely application. So the businesses, as long as the application and required material that would come in, or required documents would come in whether we decide a week's time or 3 to 5 days. As long as all of that is into us, it would be a first come, first serve basis, unless we were to distribute all of the funds out, and then we would go into more of a lottery style grants system. Another note for requirements that I think is the most important requirement is that businesses must sign on the line that they are in compliance with health department recommendations, as well as following Tennessee Promise guidelines, and understand that if they are found to not be in compliance, that they would be subject to losing that grant. We don't like to be obviously the big mean guys about that, but we have businesses who are working very hard citywide to make sure that they are following the right protocol, and we would like to be in line with that. So those are some of those initial thoughts. We could go into a little bit more detail as far as whether we wanted, I have a few other notes here. If we wanted the businesses to at least be in business for 1 year. If we wanted that restriction, we could go into really fine details here, but I didn't think that was necessary. So I just wanted to kind of do that, the view from above for you all initially. So that's a very quick run through, but I knew that you all had your the memo in front of you that I hope was a good visual as well, but I more so wanted to open this up to any questions thoughts, clarification that Terry and I could go through. Lastly, before I kind of open that up, I did want you all to see what we mean by the way the restaurants are spread out right now. So we do have 7 businesses. This is obviously just the Tennessee side of town. We do have 7 restaurants in operation currently. And then that blue star right there is the Angry Italian, who is planning to reopen in February. So if this request were to go through and we were to move forward, they would already be ready to open up their doors. So we're looking at 8 restaurants by the time this program would be in effect. So you can see they're sprawled out. A lot of the public space parking lots, if we were to set up the big community tents, you can see especially on the 600 block, so between 6th Street and 7th Street, those parking lots are behind the restaurants. So in order for them to be able to staff a space there, we did not think it was very feasible. We have not talked to, the other important part is we have not talked to the restaurants about this. We didn't want to talk to them about something that was not feasible, or talk to them about something before we spoke with you about it. But before moving forward on anything, we would absolutely like to talk to them individually about their needs and make sure that our assumptions are correct and research is correct. More research than assumptions. But
Maggie,
Terry,
with
anything else before we open it? I'm so sorry, Mayor.
No, go ahead.
So
I was going to ask, would this include the 2 draft houses we have downtown as well?
It does not actually. This is just our food and not our beverage.
Okay, and did I hear you say that this would be citywide in Bristol, Tennessee?
That was in Terry and my conversations, we thought that was the most appropriate. And so, but obviously with Believe in Bristol administering it, our data comes from downtown. So that's really what we can speak on behalf of. However, we do know that there are 79 restaurants on the Tennessee side of town currently. 2 of those are temporarily closed, and then 3 are actually operating on carryout only. So it's a big number.
Mayor,
Okay, thank you.
if I could talk a little bit about process here. In order for public dollars to get into the hands of a private entity, there needs to be some sort of a pass-through, like a Believe in Bristol. And that's the reason the conversation has gone toward grants that they could administer. You do look at, okay, is this appropriate just for the downtown then? And I think it especially if when you're providing public dollars to assist a particular market like that, or particular market sector, I think it is important to open it up beyond just the downtown. And again, these grants, that I don't see them being heavy to any one particular restaurant. I see them being parceled out. I think some of the thoughts that I've had in terms of a number, so forth, to put into the grants is a number around 20,000 that would be made available to Believe in Bristol to administer a grant program. And then we'll see how that goes. In terms of procedurally how you would do that, you would go back to an appropriation agreement, just like we made to the various nonprofits in July. And this would be something that you would have to formally consider at a January meeting if you chose to do so. If that was something that council felt like we needed to move forward with, then we would craft an appropriation agreement for your consideration on January 5th. If I'm not mistaken, the Believe in Bristol board would meet earlier that morning at 8 a.m. and the program would be laid out to that board and determine their interest in the program. I would assume it would be a positive response. And if so, the item would be on your agenda then later on that evening, if this is something City Council wants to proceed with. Once again, this is a little different than what this city has done previously, but we are in a little different times. And I think if this is a gesture that we can extend to support a particular segment of our community that has suffered substantially and continues to do so, I think it's appropriate movement forward.
So I know back on, I was looking at some emails. You know, I think for me anyway, would want to hear from the restaurants themselves because I was just looking back. I don't know if you remember, Maggie, I guess this was in May maybe, we had brought up of closing some of the streets to offer. I know the Virginia side did, and we had reached out to the downtown restaurants and they were not interested in that. So I would think that of finding out what their feeling is on this, what the process would be, what they would have to comply with, and how this would go, I think is a big piece of the puzzle.
I agree. And thank you for bringing that up. That was a big thing in our early conversations about street closures and use of public space for something like this, because of that very same reaction from the businesses at that time in May. And it continues to be the case. Those restaurants were surviving on curbside. And so a street closure would have taken away those easy pickup spaces for them. And so they were more focused on the curbside aspect than the outdoor dining aspect. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a very good point.
I was just going to mention, well, first off, I'll say thank you, Maggie and Terry and the staff for hopping on this so quickly. That's excellent work and great information. You mentioned restaurants, a total of almost 100 restaurants in Bristol, Tennessee, and I'm assuming that a good number of those are fast food restaurants. Have you thought about any designation of fast food versus, I think just talking out loud, I think a lot of the fast food restaurants have not seen as big of an effect of their business as businesses that rely on, interior dining, in some cases higher end interior dining than fast food. So have you thought about that? And if you have, what is the number of restaurants besides these 8 restaurants that you've mentioned that in the downtown area? How many restaurants are there that don't qualify as a fast food restaurant that we would be looking at, do you think?
Yeah, go for it.
I'll take that. I put together a list of all the restaurants, and if you take out the fast food and the like Papa John's is pickup only on pizza, 2 of their locations, you're down to about 50%. You could cut out about 50% of them that wouldn't necessarily have a need. I just wanted I was curious how many actual restaurants there were in Bristol, and 79 was kind of a shocking number. But yeah, you could, when the rules are written, the rules can be written to include or exclude however we see fit. We were trying to get you all the information and some guidance to move forward. Maggie and I've already pulled some grants from other locales and looking at what makes sense and what restrictions should be. And absolutely, I don't send McDonald's being eligible for a heater for their table outside.
Yeah, and there might be some potential to even, to your point, Chad, about the fast food industry maybe not seeing as much of a decline in sales. Maybe in our requirements we require 30 or 3 months worth of financial or P&L compared to last year's for a comparison on that. I'm just throwing that out there. That's literally off the top of my head, but there might be a way for us to maybe not categorize them out, but be able to assist those who have been hurt worse.
I think of having an application process, and whether it be the Believe in Bristol board or what of looking at those applications and of the ones that truly need it, that need the help. So I think that would be a key part of this, that we, you know, there has to be some that, because we don't, I mean, if first come, first served basis, yeah, the application process, but then there has to be a committee or a board or someone that can review these applications and make the determination the best that you can of how it's going to be the money.
The application basically has a, for lack of a better word, an essay. You know, explain to us why you need it and how you're going to use it to just to benefit your business. I think the lottery is if you get 50 of those that all can justify their need, then there has to be a selection process. Absolutely, there would have to be a criteria for meeting certain things before you even go into that file. It's not just simply fill out an application and say I need money. There would have to be significant justification for what you need and why you need it, how you're going to use it.
And another example similar, they had actually 3 different rounds for applications to come in. So the application was open for about a week and a half, and then they closed it for review. And so that is definitely a system that we can implement into our application process as well. We do believe in Bristol. We do have an existing economic vitality committee that actually oversees our entrepreneur grant competition. And so they are used to going through business applications and making those decisions. So we do have some things in place to be able to utilize within Believe in Bristol for those things.
Well, I think another point would be of, there's been different, was it the region ahead, or there's been other groups that have put grants out there. I would think that we need to know if they have received any of those grants previously or anything of making the decision. I think it's a great idea. I'm a little bit of, I guess, concerned with of the other businesses that have been affected and that were, I don't know. I think it's a great idea, but I do have a few.
I understand your point there. That's definitely a concern for us as well, as we oversee all of downtown. That's also a concern for the Virginia side of town, which we'll be having conversations on interest on that side of town as well. I think that we can't leave everyone else behind necessarily, but I think this is a starting point at least.
Well, what I was going to say, I see this as an opportunity to help address the needs and concerns of our restaurateurs. I know that in other cities, Nashville in particular, they've had igloos on top of buildings for quite a while now as a draw, a novelty. And I had my router at home crashed, so I'm back at the office. So I may have missed a little something in there, but and it may be that there's a partial awarding of a grant. That it might be that rather than having a tent, a business owner may want to offset some cost along with this. And then, of course, if there may need to be a clause for drawback, in that if this is awarded and the business no longer, unfortunately, could exist as it does at the time of the grant being awarded, that the product would be returned to Believe in Bristol or to whomever, because it is a product of value. And so I would just suggest that, I think it's a great program. I think, when you're given lemons, make lemonades. And I think that this could really set our restaurants throughout the city, but especially downtown, apart in that it's a safe environment. It's a novelty. It's and it might not be that it's just used during this era of COVID, but that it then becomes very novel moving forward. So I see it as an assistance to the restaurants in the immediate but I also see it as a long-term providing a novel attraction to our restaurants.
Maggie and I actually talked about the igloos and how we hope that somebody would see that as a new ideal and say, hey, I'm going to be the person where everybody wants to come and eat in one of the igloos out back. We actually talked about somebody hopefully grasping that and making that their unique concept for their restaurant.
Exactly.
So
if the tents would be less expensive, if we had someone that was willing to offset the difference between a tent and an igloo for its novel factor, and they see it as more of a long-term use, I would support that, because it's not just the immediacy of now. It is really transcending some of our restaurants to next level moving forward. And I think this is a great opportunity for the city, being as business friendly as we are and as supportive as we are of the business community, to set that standard a little bit higher.
Yeah, I think it definitely shows that, we care about our small businesses downtown and across the city, and just the approach and, the idea behind it, I think will go a long ways as well.
Have we thought, Maggie, about attaching once to use if this is approved and the city provides the seed money for these grants, have we thought about a campaign to GoFundMe and to expand on this to help our restaurants downtown? And it may be then that even it could not just downtown, but then we could expand it to an even greater platform.
Yeah, I know that there is some work being done in the private sector currently that I think could be a really great asset to this program in the future. I'm not sure. I can't really say anything else than that, but I do know that the private sector is working hard. So
I'll just add in my support. I think it's great. At some point also, I would hope we could do that there's going to be more funding coming down, or that we can figure out for our arts, because I think they also have been hit extraordinarily hard and haven't seen much, if any, support or help for the nonprofit arts. So, but I think it's awesome. I think it'll be great.
I'll also say that, as you figure out a good time to talk with our restaurants, and by the way, I'm open-minded. Malin mentioned our draft houses as well. I'm open-minded to that if you think that should be included. But once you talk with the restaurants, if it looks like that they really have some good ideas and some, ways of using the money, that we're not necessarily restrict it to 20,000, but let's see what they say first. And it may be that we need less, or maybe that we need more. I don't know. I think it depends. I think they're going to have some ideas as well.
I think you're right. And we, from now until January, we will meet with those businesses, and we will also draft up a clearer picture as far as application process and program guidelines for you all to see as well.
And how quickly can this be turned around if we're not going to vote till January? I mean, is this something that can be turned around in a matter of a couple of weeks, or?
That would be our hope. When Mr. Sora and I spoke a couple weeks ago, we had looked at potentially March being our goal for that. So if it's voted in January, we do the application process and talk to all the restaurants in these next couple weeks, then I think we can move it along quickly.
I think what I would suggest, if there is a consensus of council to move forward with a program of this nature, and it being a grant type nature. I know when Maggie and I talked, and she just referenced the conversation in March, I was thinking then about our initial concept of purchasing material, public spaces, those types of things, so that that we would be ready to do something. But grants to individual restaurants can move much more quickly than that. And essentially the funding would be provided and they would procure what they felt like best met their business needs. But I think if, looking at it from a process standpoint, if City Council is comfortable with this as a pilot program, if they're comfortable with 20,000 as an initial seed, then I would suggest we bring to council then an amendment to the appropriation agreement for your consideration at your January 5th meeting. As far as the terms of the grant and how the grant is administered, I would leave that, as we do any appropriation agreement, up to the entity that's receiving the appropriation. So in other words, Maggie and her staff in conjunction with the BIB board would determine how that grant program would work, and we get down at the 5,000 foot level to break out what qualifies, what doesn't qualify, and so forth. And actually then, and what clawback procedures might be necessary in the event of non-performance and so forth. Let them think through that piece. I think it's important to do that because we need to use this nonprofit as our entity for providing that grant. And so I don't think we need to overmanage the grant process. But if it is the consensus of council that you want to proceed with this, or if there are other manners in which you want to tweak it, let us know, and we'll begin to craft something for your consideration on the 5th.
I would be very interested in seeing a pilot program of this nature. Of course, not making a motion because we're in work session, but I would be very interested in seeing such a pilot program put into process for our consideration at the January.
I would advocate for a larger dollar amount, slightly larger, and then the ability to come back with more for another round. Also, I don't know if it's already been proposed, but there needs to be a percentage that is for admin. That's usual in grants. So some kind of percentage, because it's going to be extra load for Believe in Bristol. And right now, with 1.5 employees, it's possible that with a few more hours paid for, that would help with the administration. So that's pretty normal to any grant that I've experienced with nonprofits. There's a percentage for admin. So I would encourage us popping that up a little bit more, whether it's 30,000 and allowing some of that for admin, which it could be whatever percentage. The max is usually 10% of a grant for admin.
Mr. Sawyer, do we have any CARES Act money that has not been designated just yet?
No, we do not. Phase 3 was designated at your last meeting, and that went to the United Way for a couple of different purposes there.
And they had admin eligible. They have admin for that program.
I would advocate for $24,000 with the 10% admin.
I just add one more thing on the restaurants, and why I really lean toward the mini grant is because that does give each individual restaurant the freedom to do what works for them rather than us dictating what works for them. So, when we looked at just the 8 downtown, the difference was so significant, was so unique for each location that it just made more sense to come to the table with, okay, if you had some money, what could you do for yourself, rather than saying, here's some money, do this. And so, that's what our conversations with the restaurants will be is, okay, if you had money, how could you do it? And then let them draft that into the application and send back to us. So that's the conversation is how can we help you? What works for you? Because everyone is, I took the time, I went on Google Earth down to ground level and looked at every business, and the layout is all 79 of them is so unique. Property availability, spacing, staffing, access is all so unique that's why the grant makes so much more sense. So thank you.
So what I'm hearing is Terry's got nothing but time, so we can make this program work.
Well, and I think it would be good to hear from other council. Are you good to leaving it with staff to land somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000, or does anybody feel strongly about that?
From a staff standpoint, I would prefer council to give us a number.
Yeah. So Margaret's stars out. I've thrown mine out. What say y'all?
Lee, what was yours again? I'm sorry, I missed part
Mine
of
was
that.
24,000 with a 10% admin. Since staff had originally suggested 20,000.
Was that 24 plus 10 or just total 24?
24 total.
You want this too?
I'm putting out 30 with 10%. So,
well, I'd go on the higher end of things myself. I was actually thinking more like 50, but let's start at 30. And I think we reserve the reserve to go higher depending on what the need is. I mean, it may be that 20 is too much. So let's see what our restaurants say. I'm good with 30,000 for right now, but reserve to increase that if needed, or decrease it if the need's not there.
So yeah, I would say if the need's not there, we could contribute that to the economic development and the program that they already have, and then just not renew it for anymore. I do like opening this to all our restaurants. I think that is critical. That also adds to the need for some admin because of not being groups that Believe in Bristol usually work with already established relationships. And I think being sure that a couple of those are reached for input as well for looking. But I think it's a great start, and with understanding that we may want to come back and look at it again. Also, there may be more CARES money that comes in that we have options to look at how it's designated.
But just to be clear, what is the projected turnaround? Once we meet January 5th, what is the projected turnaround of being able to have something like this up and in place?
If we talk to the restaurants and clarify our application process within BIB the month of January, I would see we could open up applications the 1st of February and be able to administer the grants almost immediately.
I mean, I could go along with either amount. If we went ahead and went in with the 30, then if we saw, if we went in with the 20, if we saw we had a need, then we'd have to come back together again. But if we went in with the 30 and then we don't use it, I can go either way. But 30 is probably a good shot.
Let me ask you.
I'm good with 30 as long as we hold our options open to come back if we need to draw back if we need to, because if we don't have product in place until February or March, then we've almost made it through the winter months. And then, that's my only concern is how quickly we can get this to turn as an advantage.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention as well, that, if your plan is to talk to the restaurants between now and January 1, and then you have a 30-day turnaround time for application process, no, you want to take it down more like 2 weeks?
Yeah, I would say just do applications open for a week and a half and close it to be able to review and then have the opportunity to reopen it.
So January 12th.
Maybe to approach this as though this is a possibility, kind of let everybody know that this is a possibility so that they're pretty much sitting on go when we're ready to begin our process, or BIB is going to begin their process.
Absolutely.
I mean, if that can be moved up from February 1, my thought process is you're probably going to have some decent days in March. So if they had the equipment in place March 1st, having that as a goal to have their needs in place by March 1st, then that I think would be really good if we could do that.
I agree.
Good deal.
Okay, we'll put together an amendment to the appropriation agreement for Believe in Bristol, and we'll have that amount in there, 30,000. I understand that would be inclusive of the admin carve out, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We'll have that for your consideration January 5th. And then we'll certainly invite Maggie to participate in that process to give you an update on feedback from the restaurant community.
Great stuff.
Wonderful. Thank you all for your time and support.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Bristol Housing Authority.
Yes, Mayor. Over the past several months, Council has been involved in exploring various incentive packages that can be utilized to stimulate residential development within our community. And several of those have been implemented along the way. One of the strategies that we talked about last spring was the creation of redevelopment districts through Bristol Housing Authority that would allow for tax increment financing to be utilized for residential development. There were three pieces or three areas that were identified in the original 2005 redevelopment plan. They did not move forward with approval at that time. So we're bringing two of those back, and a third one is in the process of being brought to the Housing Authority. But the first two were considered by the Housing Authority at their December the 9th meeting, and it was both of those redevelopment districts were unanimously received approval. Mr. Joel Conkin is with us today, along with Steve Cyphers from Bristol Housing Authority, to review those the two redevelopment districts and talk about the opportunities that TIF financing brings. Joel, Steve, whoever wants to lead out with this presentation.
Okay, I'll start. This is Joel. Hello, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to be back with you. So we have two districts here, and in essence, the plan documents are very similar. Obviously, the fact patterns of each district and the history and the blighting factors are different, but the end result is the same, and that is that each of these areas, and I think the maps are, if you can bring those up on the screen, I don't have control of the screen. So that is the Volunteer Parkway South district that you can see in purple. And so by declaring this area redevelopment district, the council is in essence saying that this is an area of the city that has elements of blight or blighting factors, and would make it eligible for the redevelopment tools that are part of being in a redevelopment district. And that the primary one, of course, is TIF, tax increment financing. And that is available just like we have used it in the past for commercial developments. It is just as legally usable for residential developments, just as it is for commercial developments. In fact, I think the original purpose was probably more residential oriented. So by approving this district, where there is no specific project being approved today, but the city would be declaring that this is a redevelopment district and publicly stating that we are open to development proposals through the Bristol Housing Authority and potentially the use of TIF in this area if deemed appropriate. So I'll stop there. That's just sort of setting the table for both of these districts. Maybe you could swap, the other map. That's the Hillside Boer Road map. I think the maps sort of speak for themselves as far as the areas go. Bristol Housing did hold public hearings on both of these matters. There were some comments from some property owners within the district. I think mostly favorable. There were some concerns about the use of eminent domain. That has been addressed in the plan document, and in essence restricts the use of eminent domain to public infrastructure type improvements, or the use where requested by property owner to clear title issues.
Joel, you
So-
made the comment that it would be, as a redevelopment district, and TIFs could be applied as deemed appropriate. What would that be? What would an appropriately deemed TIF be?
Okay, so that's probably a poor choice of words on my part, but any of the TIF projects that we've approved in the past, in essence, the residential project would go through that exact same process through Bristol Housing. The developer would file an application with Bristol Housing. They would analyze the project, obviously in close coordination with city staff, try and determine whether TIF is really necessary for the project financially. And then the Bristol Housing would make a recommendation, take it to their board, and then ultimately bring it back to city council, just like prior TIFs have been processed.
Okay, thank you.
So my question or comment or request is not specifically for Joel. So a part of this came from studying our volunteer parkway area. And I think that was several of our staff who did that. Could someone address a little bit of what the goals are? And I think we would love to see some of this as mixed use and encourage commercial and residential. So can one of y'all who presented that plan to us just make comments, or Mr. Sora?
I think I'll ask Tom Anderson to speak to that issue, to respond to that question. Tom, are you
Sorry
out?
about that. It took me a second to find my buttons. Yeah, the zoning actually lends itself. There is B3 and there's also residential out there. So it lends itself to mixed use. Obviously, there has to be a gap analysis to prove the but-for clause to move forward in tax increment financing. So, there are some hurdles, but this will incent not just rooftops. It could be multifamily as well as other commercial development. And that's what our hopes are, especially on South Volunteer.
I think when y'all presented that, it was pretty exciting, because that is what some of the trends are in other areas and communities, to get back to that mixed use, which was found in some of our older cities before we got away from that to doing shopping centers and
right. And that's actually the intent and the hope for this project, or this study area too.
We had mentioned in that prior presentation, I think we had designated about 4 areas along the Volunteer Parkway. So one of them being where we had the Ford dealership, and other areas, also where the Lavender Lane Apartments is, that area. But my question is we had, in that particular scenario, we were deeming it as mixed, that it had to be mixed use in order to qualify for a pilot type of financing. Are we saying that any of those properties could be used for solid residential and get TIF or pilot help?
No, the pilot, the pilot part is what would run through the Industrial Development Board, and their incentives are more either low and moderate income housing, or it has to be commercial. The tax increment financing is actually an element of the Housing Authority and the Housing Act, separate from an ED TIF.
Okay, so my question is this also too, is if we were, the term underutilized was used by Joel a little while ago. if we have a piece of property, and let's say that it's farmland property, that was being, what we could term it as being underutilized, would that qualify for TIF financing as well?
Well, the answer to that is actually pretty clear. There's Tennessee law specifically on that topic that says agricultural use, it will not qualify as blighted property.
Okay. But if it were if a piece of property went from agricultural and it was in an area where other housing was, and the city were to deem that property as residential, then it could potentially qualify?
I don't think a change in zoning or even like a conceptual plan would still not allow it to qualify as blighted. You know, vacant property by itself, absent some other circumstances, typically would not qualify as blight. And that's sort of the triggering mechanism under this TIF Act. But sometimes you have environmental conditions, you have grading conditions, you have some sort of other unusual property ownership or layout that might cause it to be just truly vacant property to qualify. But for the most part, you've got things that have improvements on them that are dilapidated or obsolescent.
But Tom, if I understand you correctly, for instance, the property that is across that used to be the car dealership on the Volunteer Parkway, it is nestled in, a lot of residential properties in and around it. If that were to go through the housing authority, could that qualify? If it was nothing but housing, could that qualify for TIF financing? Or Joel, maybe that's a question for you.
Yeah, that's more the legal aspect, but it's not a redevelopment district because it didn't have those conditions. That's why we went the other route and created the strategic development areas, which would allow up to a 10-year pilot to attach. It would function as a TIF, but it would have to have multi-use.
Okay.
So what are our opportunities? We know that housing is an issue across our country, and we're no different. So what are our options and are there different categories or whatever with some of these things where we would ask for a certain percentage or a certain number or whatever of housing opportunities to be provided that would be considered affordable or whatever the different category. I mean, there's affordable housing and then there's housing that's affordable, kind of different things. Are there opportunities where we could encourage that development?
Joel, can you speak to that from a legal
standpoint? From a legal standpoint, all of these areas would be completely open to any sort of what I would define as affordable housing, from a governmental definition that could include things that are low-income housing tax credit properties, some other sort of subsidized housing. That certainly, assuming that it meets zoning requirements and other things, there would be nothing illegal about them also having a TIF. So that's certainly doable. That would depend, on a developer having a project that would cash flow for them. But I think probably because there are already a lot of programs for those sorts of housing, from a market rate standpoint, the TIF is trying to create a level playing field for some of these areas that we've identified so that developers could come in and get the TIF to help cover some of the cost in creating the infrastructure here, so they can put in, significant market rate single family or possibly multifamily housing. And Tom can correct me if I'm wrong on the city goals there.
I believe you're right.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tom or Jolie, the one, this area here, but also, if I'm correct, I think I heard you say that would be ideal for retail, restaurant development. Could hotels go in this area as well under this?
Yeah, I believe there are some areas that the zoning would allow for hotels, and I think the rooftops will drive and the market will drive, some of those activities. Of course, that's pretty central to the Tri-Cities, so it's just the chicken and egg kind of thing. But
Sure.
yeah, especially along Volunteer Parkway, it lends itself to commercial development.
Yeah. Thanks.
Again, in terms of process, we'll, unless council feels otherwise, we'll have this on your January 5th agenda for approval by resolution that will establish these these two pieces of property as redevelopment districts eligible for the tax increment financing. And then in the future, once a developer brings a project on either one of those sites, then that would require action by city council to extend the TIF financing, as well as Sullivan County Commission.
But Joel, would you explain one more time, just for clarity, as to how the TIF specifically would be applied to residential development?
Okay, sure. So this could be, there could be let's just say a subdivision or a group of townhomes, for example. You could have one developer come in and acquire 10 acres in one of these districts and build, 40 townhomes, let's say. So that property is going to have a certain base assessment. Right now, it's going to be generating X dollars of property taxes. Let's say that's $10,000. So once these improvements are built, it's going to be generating Y in property taxes, and let's say that's $110,000. So the increase, and this is roughly speaking because there are some exceptions and holdbacks for debt service and different things, but roughly speaking, the new tax revenue can then be redirected through the housing authority to help the developer cover certain qualified expenditures for that development. And that's mostly things typically like utilities, infrastructure, grading, demolition, those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And that can last, anywhere from 15 to legally up to 30 years. Although historically Bristol's been more in the 15 to 20 year range.
And so I know in some conversations that we've had, is when you defer that tax increment through a TIF, then you still have, especially in residential, you have ongoing expenses such as education, infrastructure, et cetera, fire and safety. How are those costs then offset?
Well, that could possibly be done through a holdback. In other words, when these projects come forward, the city does not have to commit all of the increment, all of the new tax revenue to the project. They can commit a certain percentage of the new revenue. So there's a sharing of revenue between the developer and the city. So that is possible as well. Obviously, some of that's dependent upon, the financial details and necessity of the TIF for the project and what they really need to make that happen and how much the city wants that to happen.
Right.
So there's some give and take in those situations, but but there's some flexibility there where the city can, get whatever new money they think it might need to support the new development.
So, and let me just say, I support trying to work through a TIF opportunity for residential development if it's appropriate. But I do think that we need to be mindful that we have schools on our agenda that need to be renovated and reworked. And so, Joel, would you say that it would be reasonable to expect us to have some sort of a formula that could address educational funding as well as those needs necessarily going into it, so that no one's blindsided in this process to think that it's just that we haven't thought through this as to expenses that we will incur, and hopefully, we will. I think a tip in these situations can be very positive, but I think that we need to still be mindful of the expenses related to the TIF. So I guess my question is, would it, in situations like this, is it conceivable that a formula would be put into place to be sure that necessary expenses would be covered to some degree, a percentage, some type of a percentage formula?
If I could answer that, Councilwoman Powers, this is really a twofold process. What we're talking about today is just the designation of the areas of redevelopment district. Once we get a project and we determine what that gap is, if you'll remember, I think both Joel and Tom talked about a gap that justifies the TIF. Then you look at the uniqueness of that particular project, and you would structure your whatever TIF agreement you had at that time based on the uniqueness of the project. Whatever the gap is, I mean, you could certainly have a carve out, and I've observed Sullivan County Commission do this. But the gap is the gap that has to be covered. So what historically Bristol, Tennessee has done, we've carved out from the TIF our percentage of debt service that ties back to our budget. And that's usually 6, 7, 8%, somewhere in that range, that we'll pull out and set aside to service that debt. Historically, we've chosen then to commit the rest of it to the retirement of that gap, so that that TIF pays off maybe in 12 years rather than 16 years. So whatever you carve out still has to service the gap. So that would be the decision that would be made, unique to the project, unique to the gap that needs to be serviced. And then do we try to retire that debt over as quickly as we can, or do we try to pay ourselves something along the way and maybe retire that debt in 18 years rather than 13 or 14 years?
Right. And y'all all understand why I'm bringing this up. I support TIF for residential development, but I think we need to go into it with our eyes wide open, that it is not without incurred costs and expense, and how will we parse all of that out so that we are going into this, and so that we're not misrepresenting what we're trying to do to developers, thinking that, well, it's an all or nothing, but know that there are expenses that would be attached to this that would have to be taken into consideration. I mean, Chad, what do you think?
Sorry about that. I could not find my button as well. Great point, Lee. In my opinion, it's. I mean, especially when pertaining to the schools, right. we do lack infrastructure and school facilities. I'm hoping that we all get to take a tour of all of our schools, so that we can further that discussion. But yeah, I think it's a great point, and certainly agree with you in that as well.
Great.
One last thing I'll just mention is I did receive an email, so you may have an email in your inbox.
Yeah, I mean, I concur with you, Lee, as well. I mean, it's very good points that we got to consider as we go forward. But again, I can support the program in general. Anything else?
I would just say thanks for the work done on this by the housing folks, and thanks to the housing board for doing the redevelopment work. It's a part of what they're tasked with, and appreciate they're doing that as well as the other areas that they work with. So thank y'all.
Yep. Great job, guys.
Thank you.
I concur.
I want to point out one thing very quickly. There is a slight difference in the definition of the eminent domain between the two plans. The one for Volunteer South is a little more restrictive, and we worked with some of the property owners who initially were very hesitant and were very outspoken about this, mainly because of what happened back in 2005, 2006. So like I said, there's just a few words that are different in the section that has to do with land acquisition and disposition. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, extension of Families First Coronavirus Response Act. You're muted, Mr. Sora.
I know where the button is. I just don't remember to push it. At the onset of the pandemic, Congress approved the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And as part of that act, organizations of our size or employers of our size were required to pay sick leave under the Emergency Sick Leave Act. And it provided for reasons specific to the COVID-19 virus. The act provided up to 80 hours, or required us as an employer to provide up to 80 hours of sick leave at the employer's regular rate of pay, above and beyond what the employee would have in sick leave or vacation type bank, to circumstances surrounding the virus. Now, that could be a positive test, certainly. We would want that person out of the workplace, but it also, and this is what is different from other types of illnesses that we've experienced, there was a number of quarantine orders. Matter of fact, the vast majority of our employees have been away from work as a result of a quarantine, whether they were symptomatic or not. So so this requires organizations our size to provide up to 80 hours of sick leave to address virus-related issues. The act is set to expire on December the 31st of this year. Without the extension to this act, then our employees would have to rely on their bank of sick leave or vacation leave to address a quarantine order, regardless of whether they were symptomatic or not. We've had conversations with a number of the cities around us. Kingsport has already taken the initiative to extend the Families First Coronavirus Response Act as our initiative on into the next year. This is what we are also proposing, that the act extend until the expiration of Governor Lee's order or June 1st, 2021, whichever comes first. But what it would provide is for every employee that is not exhausted their 80-hour bucket, so to speak, of emergency paid leave related to the COVID-19 virus, still have that intact. And our fear is that if we don't have that intact, that employees will be reluctant to report illness. They may come to work symptomatic. They may be reluctant to report that they had family members visiting from somewhere over the weekend and they were exposed unknowingly. These types of things, and this particular act, I think, has been very beneficial to us as an organization in terms of mitigating the spread of virus within our workforce. And I think we've done a very, very good job of doing that. Have we had incidents of the virus? Absolutely. I think we've had 33 positive test results for our employees. We have quarantined many, many more based on either exposures to that employee or exposures to non-work related contact. So what we would recommend is that you extend this act until, once again, the expiration of Governor Lee's emergency declaration, or June 1st, 2021, whichever comes first. Kingsport has already taken the measure to do this. Johnson City is not going to consider it. Alcoa, Maryville, and Oak Ridge have all had this same conversation that we're having, or will be having this conversation this month, with a staff recommendation to follow the same suit as we are recommending today. Mary Lee's on the line. She or on the call or on the Zoom meeting. She can answer any questions as to how she has administered this program for us since the onset of the virus. And she can answer any questions as to how this has specifically applied within our organization. Mary Lee, did I leave out anything that you want to add?
Great job, Mr. Sawyer. Good job. Yeah. Well, I can't emphasize enough how important that this has been to our self-reporting. Our employees have been, I can't say enough about how wonderful they've been about self-reporting. We've had our self-reporting in place for months now, since March. We've had quarantine situations, 254 to date. Now, there are a few employees that have been quarantined more than once, but there have been 254 cases that have been vetted and quarantined either by the health department or a physician or a health professional. So we've used this a lot. This is something we use daily. And I personally have a lot of fear about what will happen if we don't have this as a resource after the end of December.
So I would assume this would be considered a best practice to follow this model to keep people as healthy as possible. Mary Lee, in your HR world, is that the case? Or
all of the cities that I've talked to so far are having some sort of conversation with their boards and councils this month about some kind of extension after the end of December in order to have a tool.
Yeah, I think it's a very prudent move to continue doing this. I can't imagine a city or a community not wanting to support something like this.
And thank you, Mary Lee.
I agree.
All right, we'll have a resolution then ready for your consideration on January 5th, and that would extend from a city standpoint this act forward. We may see this come out of Congress between now and the end of the month, but we felt like we could not afford to not have this conversation.
Smart. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Good job. Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Item number 9, discussion of amendments to open records policy.
Yes, Mayor, in April of 2017, City Council approved Resolution 1731, which formally adopted a written public records policy, as was required at that time by Public Chapter 722. Since that time, that policy was modeled after, according to guidance provided by the Tennessee Office of the Comptroller. Since that time, there have been updates to the state of Tennessee's public records laws, requiring amendments to our existing policies. So Danielle's going to review those updates and proposed amendments with you now. Danielle?
Thank you, Mr. Sora. Just to briefly go through, Tim, if you'll, our existing policy in April 2017, the City Council adopted that policy, which made several elections that we were permitted by law to make. So just to cover those, we do require that someone give us a written request if they wish to receive copies of a record. By state law, we're not permitted to require a written request if somebody just wants to look at records, but we can ask people to do that. The written request makes it easier for staff to make sure that they've understood the request correctly and to keep track of records. We do limit access to records to citizens of Tennessee, except for the exceptions that I've listed, such as the routine press log, police incident reports or crash reports when they're requested by the subject of the report or an authorized agent. Building permits, because we do get requests from people in Virginia all the time for building permits on the Tennessee side, and we're just trying to be friendly at that point. And then if there's a document that's available on the city website and somebody wants a copy of it, we don't limit that to citizens, although if we are making copies for somebody, we might charge them for the copies. Speaking of charges, we adopted the state schedule of reasonable charges, which was issued by the Comptroller's Office through the Office of Open Records Counsel. So moving forward, the proposed updates would be things that there have been minor changes to the public records law, as well as some that were larger. But what we've tried to do is, you look through the red line, you'll see that we've incorporated those changes into our policy. I will say, back in 2017, the Office of Open Records Counsel had issued this model policy that we used as a model that we adopted. We don't have a new model policy yet, but we are supposed to review the policy every few years, and these are things that I've had on a list that have changed that we needed to catch up with. So just to go through them very quickly, rather than originally the law back in 2017 required us to respond by mail. They've now let us use email, since that's probably the most common way for people to communicate these days. In 2017, the Office of Open Records Counsel had promulgated a lot of forms, and we were required to use those forms. But now those are mandatory forms those are optional rather than being mandatory. We have clarified. Now, this third change is not saying that state law changed, but we are making a recommendation that if someone comes in and asks for copies of records electronically, we do want to put in our policy that we are going to give you a USB drive at our cost, rather than letting people use their own USB drives, because we don't want to put outside media into our computer systems. And so we'll give them, and we'll sell them a new USB drive that they can get their records on. We've added the new state requirement that records custodians have to keep copies of the public records request and any related correspondence for 12 months. We don't have to keep the records for 12 months. Those are subject to our record retention policies, but any records requests themselves have to be kept for 12 months, and any emails back and forth. And we have also added a requirement that addresses state law changed in, I think, 2019 to say that most personally identifying information in an accident report is confidential, and you can't get it unless you are also a subject of the accident report or a representative or an insurance agent or attorney. So we've addressed that in the policy. If you are okay with it, then we would put this revised policy on the January agenda. So if there's any questions, I'm open to questions.
Daniel, what are the most sought after records that people are looking for?
I would say they are accident reports, most likely. And I don't even handle those because they go straight to police records, but police records handles a lot of requests every day. So in terms of the citywide, in terms of the ones that I see, it would be things like building plans, building records, most likely. And you just never can tell really what's going to come in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions from anyone?
It's important to have all of this in place, so I'm in agreement with what's being proposed.
I thank you for keeping up with the details. So it's things like that that are important.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next item. It's review of rules and procedures of the City Council.
Yes, Mayor, this is an item that we've had for the last couple of work sessions, and we've been time constrained at those work sessions to have a lot of conversation. This is largely housekeeping, and we do this every 12 to 18 months. We'll take a look at this document, see what's working, see what's not working. Are there things that you would like to see that are not in a document, things that are in a document you'd like to see come out? From a housekeeping note, the current document indicates that our work sessions will start at 5:30 p.m. Obviously, we want to clean that up and state the 11 a.m. Date that we're timeline that we're currently using. But this is just an opportunity for City Council really to tell us what needs to be in this document. This guides how you interact and conduct your business amongst the five of you. So with that, I think I'm going to step back, and probably staff will do the same thing. We'll take notes and let you all have a conversation about this document. If there are things that, if you're satisfied with it, tell us that, and we'll move on to the next item of the agenda. If there are things that need to be visited, then now's a good opportunity to do that.
It seems like during the year we always come up with a couple, and then I never remember what they were because I didn't keep them, Danielle, like she does as we go along to be ready. So, but one question I had was on that time, and also there's probably several times. Is it this is something we can change every year to update it, or should we just put, like, for the work session, that annually in July that the council sets their work session and city council times, or in January or whatever, rather than having to go back and change it every time? The same thing, I think, maybe it was our attorney's email being updated. Rather than having to do that every time, just say that, the current email addresses are found on our website, or I don't know. What do y'all think? And y'all means Bill and Danielle, do we need to update that annually so it's all in one place, or can we just refer to other places for?
I think you could refer to the meeting calendar that we've already published based on your direction. During our November work session. That would be one way to handle that, and that would eliminate the housekeeping piece, because I think every year that we've brought this back, we've tweaked that aspect of it.
Right. I think that'd be easier to do that, to try to look through. I didn't mark them I'd say there's only a handful that would be like that.
One of the things that was mentioned, I believe, was the appointment of mayor and vice mayor, if that should coincide with the time of election and things that right now that changes, I think, in July. If something like that were to be changed, does that require a charter change within our?
It does. It does. Currently by charter, you make those selections at the first business meeting in July. With the next election taking place in November of 2022, and the next slate of council taking office January 1st of 2023, that would logically become the reorganization meeting in which a mayor and vice mayor would be selected. That will require a change in charter.
Are there, okay, so that is one thing that would require that. That to me seems to make sense. But, if it's going to be a huge ordeal, is it worth it? I'll throw that out for discussion, but it sounds like if you're going to do a charter change for something like that, if there's anything else out there that needs to be changed, is there anything else that we have come across that we need to have a charter change for? So I think when we changed the election date, that did not have to have a charter change.
Right.
Correct. And so I don't know of anything else that we have on the agenda besides that there's some other stuff that we have discussed.
If you recall, I guess it was last fall or maybe fall of 2019, excuse me, that Pat Hardy came, and there were a number of questions that he responded to. Some of them, I think of term limits. That was one of the questions. There's another question about a mayor serving for 2 years. There were just a lot of that type of conversation. And none of that really grew legs, so to speak. It was more conversation and just discussion about what ifs.
Well, and I'm going to throw it out there again because I think all those things you just mentioned were, part of that discussion. Does anyone think that we should have an elected mayor?
Right now, I'm very satisfied with what we do. Now, that's not to say, should we have an elected mayor in the future? Should things become, different than what they are right now? But right now, I'm very comfortable with what we have in place. What are your thoughts?
I'm okay with what we're doing right now as well. And I think that's a question to be, I don't feel very strongly one way or the other. I think it is a voice for our citizens to say, this is the person we want to put in the mayor position. It gives it, I think some people may say that it gives it more prominence and more importance. But I'm okay with the way we're doing things as is, and it seems to be working good. And I think we need to give that a little bit more time to see if appointing our mayor, or let me say this, we can appoint a mayor and plan on that person serving for 2 years, but it may be that circumstances call for that mayor to serve shorter or longer. So, I know we've had mayors that have served 4 years and a lot of mayors that have served 1 year. No, not 4 years.
I think 3 is Lee served 3, and I think Jim Messimer served 3. And as far as now prior to that, when we had the commission government, yes, but the city council, I don't know prior to 1990, but I don't think anybody served more than 3 years.
Well, and to keep in mind is our structure of government anyway. We have a collaborative council that appoints the mayor, and then we have a strong city manager. And if we went to an elected mayor, there are 2 different ways to go about an elected mayor. Is like similar to what Kingsport does with their board of mayor and aldermen, where I don't know, Bill, you can speak to that a little bit more than, much better than I can. But, I just think that if what we're doing is working and has worked, and I like the whole collaboration aspect of it. I think that what we do lends itself towards collaboration, but Bill, if we went to a completely different structure with an elected mayor, what does that look like?
Well, I think when you talk about an elected mayor, there's really 2 different paths that you can follow. And I think under a council manager form of government, or a board of mayor and alderman plan of government, which is essentially a council manager form of government that you have in Kingsport, their mayor is elected, and then the council members are elected, but it's not a strong mayor form of government. They still have a city manager. In a strong mayor form of government, you don't have a city manager, and you see this form of government across our state. You see it in certainly the big 4 of Nashville, Memphis, Nashville, Chattanooga. I'm thinking, if I'm not mistaken, I think Jackson, Tennessee is also a strong mayor form of government. I'm not sure about Clarksville, but generally these are larger cities that would have a council manager form of government. Tennessee is one of the states that allows that. Virginia, on the other hand, you have a county administrator and a city manager, one or the other, and it's more of a county administrator form of government or a city manager council form of government. But so it really, when you start talking about an elected mayor, you have to think: are we talking about a strong mayor form of government, or are we talking about something similar to Kingsport, where the mayoral position is elected just like the balance of members of council, and they really have no more authority than the other members of council, and there's still a city manager in place to address the day-to-day operations, and that's essentially the issue. Does a strong mayor serve in what's normally the city manager role here, in that they address the day-to-day operations of the city, and that's a strong mayor form of government.
I would say, go ahead, Chad.
I was just going to say that the only thing that, and I would definitely want to keep our manager council form of government. I would not want to change that by any means. But the only thing about serving in the mayor's position is it's time consuming. And, you know, it's kind of one of those things, and, you know, very enjoyable for me. And Lee, I know I liked it a lot, but, you know, it's almost more like a job than it is, you know, serving just as or not just as, but serving as a city council member. But, you know, that's the only thing that kind of comes up about that. I'm okay with the way we're doing things, but, you know, it could be in the future that I'm going to throw out one other thing too about that same sentiment is, you know, we have mayors that have served in other areas, not in Bristol that I'm aware of, but in other areas where, you know, the mayor really did not show up for any functions. And that's one of the things that I always tried to do was if I was asked to show up at a function, I wanted to be there if I could. And that's part of the time consuming part. Now we're in different times right now with COVID, but, you know, it's fairly time consuming if you're driving to Kingsport or Johnson City or some other area within the Tri-Cities area. I mean, it pretty much kills your day if you're doing that. So that's the only reason I kind of throw that out there is that part of it. I feel sometimes is you know, sometimes we don't realize the time it does take.
The only thing that I would say is that I believe that Bristol and other areas that have the strong mayor, I mean, the strong city manager, collaborative council with mayor is so successful is because you've got someone that is trained with whether it's municipal or county structures, and it is their total focus. It is their education. They are professionals. They understand departmentally and what is required, and it keeps the ongoing administration and positive production of the city from becoming overly politicized. That when you have an elected mayor in that in those circumstances, it can become very politicized. And I like our structure. I like the fact that we have professional staff that are seeing to the day-to-day ongoings, and that we have people that are educated and have higher degrees in regard to that. So I think, you know, in our situation here in Bristol, I think we've really got a great situation. So.
Yeah, I agree with you as well.
Yeah, I do too. And Chad, you point of you know, the busy calendars, you know, all I can say right now is thankful for Zoom.
You know, I really believe that's one area though that can really help in the future with time consumption. But, you know, if you got a ribbon cutting or if you have, you know, something happening at a function of some sort, you know, the Zoom is great for the meetings part, but, you know, when you need to get up to say hello and thank you to somebody, you know, they want you eyeball to eyeball.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
A couple of things. One is that I mean, we tend to rotate. We don't have that as official. There have been times in the past where city council a member never served as mayor. So if the council doesn't feel like somebody is ready for that role, or if that person does not want to serve, then that's certainly understandable on both of those counts. Also, at some point not too far past, the mayor received a little extra compensation. I think we evened that out a few years ago. We could always go back and look at that to try to help, especially I think the demands on the mayor are much higher now than they were a few years ago. And Lee, I'm grateful you did all those pinnacle ribbon cutting. So, and I can tell you during COVID, it was 8 to 6 o'clock job a lot of the times, just doing stuff. some of that was my choice with community as well. The other just tidbit is Jeanette Blazier, who I served at the same time she was serving in Kingsport, and then John Clark more recently. Each of them talked, there's no perfect system. They had criticisms of their system. So that there's disadvantage to any system. So anyway.
Malin, I'd like to get you a Cadillac Eldorado and put some horns out on the front of it. You know?
Well, I bought me a cowboy hat yesterday, Chad.
Here comes the mayor. I'm just going to throw this out here, and I'm going to tell you what I believe, and I believe in our federal elected officials. And I really think on the state level as well, but at least our federal elected officials, I believe in term limits. And up until working with Margaret Fire Robin, I have had that opinion about all elected officials. Margaret, for me, has been the exception. She has been steady as you go for the last, how many years? 20, I mean, how long has it been, Margaret? 30 years? But anyway, you know.
No, and I did have a break, okay? So I did have a break, but thank you, Chad. I mean, yeah, thank you.
But, and again, I think she's done a wonderful job whenever she has stepped up. But I do believe in term limits. And I don't know how if anybody else feels about that. I'm just going to throw it out there. If we're talking about potentially changing our charter anyway, how do others feel about term limits?
I agree with you. I mean, I feel the same way, but then I go back and forth of, you know, in the event, I mean, we see it every day with even boards for our city of how many openings we have and of someone stepping up. So, you know, I think those are the things you have to consider if putting in the term limits of, we don't have as big a pool when you're talking about on a federal level and so forth, of the citizens that may step up and do it. So I don't know, I go back and forth on them.
You mentioned a good point about boards, about serving on boards. Should there be limits for anybody serving on our boards as well? That's a good point.
I think Vince's point was difficulty in filling them sometimes.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, of the difficulty of filling the boards. And so that if you've got term limits in place, then it comes up for a city council election and there's no one there. So I don't know.
I feel much more strongly about it on the federal level. I will say that.
But I think there's a lot I would like to see us, I mean, when we're talking about the charter, that before we do make any changes to the charter, that we truly sit down, and I know I go through fairly often of looking at things, but would like to take the time to look at, and all of us sit down of knowing everything in our charter, and really looking at and seeing what, if there is other things that we want to change. I think before we make any changes, let's do it all at one time. But I think that it would be ask of the rest of council to just look at it and go through it and see if there is anything that we'd like to see changed while we're doing it.
I think from a timeline standpoint, and I think Councilman Turner's point is well taken, and it is two separate issues from what we're talking about today as far as rules and procedures and the charter. But the charter amendment that would address the selection of mayor and vice mayor needs to be entered into the 2022 General Assembly for them to take that action. So you've really got from now until about this time next year to have that conversation that Councilman Turner's talking about. And I think is the thought process is good. Is if we're going to open up the charter, take a look. Are there other things in there that you want to clean up, amend, change, and so forth? And it's a good conversation to have during the late spring, early summer, or summer and early fall, and try to have it buttoned up by October or so of 2021, so that we can move forward with the proper votes and the draft language to get to our state representatives.
Sounds like it might be good to have a work session dedicated to that, and so we don't get distracted with everything else that needs to be accomplished.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That would be great to do once we put our budget and everything to bed July 1st, because we've got a lot this winter and spring between the budget and the reassessment of the property tax rate, and just a lot. We still have a lot on our plate. So I would be great with that if we did it after July 1st.
The other thing I'll throw out there too that I said made sense was, the selection of mayor and vice mayor, along with election time periods. It may be a good idea to keep it the way it is so that it happens midway through I don't know. I do.
I don't think it'll work. You mean have it in those off years?
No, have it in July rather than January.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it could make sense because normally you'd have somebody who's been there for a year or two, but I mean,
they may not run, or they might lose an election.
That would be the only problem with that, is that if you did have someone serving in one of those roles that was not elected in November of that year, they would not be coming back in January.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, on the surface you see that, but I mean, I would think, for instance, Malin had served a year on the city council, got a little bit of experience, and then was appointed as mayor. Vince will kind of be in that off year like you're talking about. But at any rate, I mean, that's just things to think about. You're right. I was going to ask, by the way, if just Danielle, can you just start reading the charter for us, and we'll start picking stuff out right now?
No.
I think the key would be for you guys to also read the charter, and I'll read it, and everybody will read it.
Is that paint I see behind you drying, Danielle?
So going back to our procedures book, rules and procedures, I can't remember how long ago we put this together, but I think it was under Jeff Broughton that we did it. And it's just been a great guide. And also I know recently, just thinking that there's some other organizations that could use this as an example that could be helpful for, and sometimes we just don't think about outline how we conduct ourselves or do business or whatever, but it would be great to share it with more people. I know we shared it with Bristol, Virginia. They made their own, used ours just like we do homework and look at different communities for stuff. They did it. They've prepared theirs. I think networks that we serve on has, we've entertained the idea that something like this for networks could be helpful, that just guiding principles that everybody agrees with for how you conduct meetings and provide information, etc. So.
Yeah, I have one item that I think we need to talk a little bit about, is the appointment of citizens. I think either on the application or somewhere in our language, we need to have some clarity as to how we go about or whose responsibility it is to engage with that particular candidate that's applying. I know it's kind of an open area, but I just want to put that out for some discussion.
So Malin, you're talking about somebody who applies for a board or commission.
Yes.
how something just in writing that council members are encouraged to make contact prior to their appointment or something along those lines.
Either council members or somewhere on that board application that the individual applying knows who to go and talk to or knows who to contact or have a contact list. Because I know we've had some voids from time to time for that clarity.
Right. I think for sure adding it to the application, so just something that if applicants wish to contact council members, they're welcome to do so, or if that's
and provide that information, that contact information on that application as well.
I'd be okay with that.
Sorry, I had to step away for a second. What?
We're talking about boards and commissions and contacting them. And I've learned that y'all probably already know, recently learned the terminology bio break. So I didn't know about that for Zoom meetings.
Now, that's what I was talking about, was just having some process or language either on the application or in our procedures to guide, prospective candidate. What should they be doing next to reach out to us, and if we put that on the application, we need to have the contact information of the council where that individual can reach out to one of us, and or put it in language where we make sure we reach out to them.
Sounds good.
I think I'm okay with both. I think something that in our procedures that council members are encouraged to, or something like that.
And is encouraged to reach out to council and to give them our city website email address.
That's the way I think I would do is on the application have a tagline at the bottom or something, or wherever on it appropriate, that says you're encouraged to reach out. Exactly. Reach out to our councilman, just what Lee said.
Yeah. You should, or encourage you to reach out or something along that nature. Yeah. And that gives them a good avenue as to how to the next step for them.
Yeah. And then if any of us want to reach out to them, having not been reached out to, then that's our individual prerogative. I think that kind of covers all bases and gives everyone an opportunity to feel free to interact.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, these folks are seeking employment, but they're not, it's non-compensated employment. And then, typically an employer would be reaching out to that individual on an application. So that's kind of the way I was looking at it. But I think we just need to have that good dialogue with that candidate.
So can we just refer them to the website for our contact so that we don't have to change it regularly, since council changes periodically?
Well, I would just include it on there for the ease of doing business. And we change maybe every 2 years, we can easily go and update the application every 2 years if we need to. I think it's just easy for them.
The contact information, I'm assuming, is an email address for you through the city email. Yeah. You don't want your city cell phones or anything like that.
City email.
Yes, just the email.
Okay, we can make that change. We'll also make the change regarding the starting time of our work session. Other changes that in a housekeeping measure here.
I'm sorry, hold on a second. Did you say we're changing the times of our work session?
No, what we talked about a while ago is we have historically had our work session time noted in our procedures. And like right now, if you look at it, it's 5:30 p.m. We probably 2 years ago adjusted to 11. So now we need to go back and clean that up. And what Councilwoman Robin was speaking of a while ago, can we not just tie that to some wording referencing our printed annual meeting calendar? And we can do that. And that avoids us having to revisit that whenever we change the time of our work session.
Gotcha.
Okay, anything else? Okay, we'll move on to number 11, proposed amendments to the School Resources Officer MOU.
Yes, Mayor. As you recall, a couple of months ago, maybe as long ago as 3 months or so, Council approved a memorandum of understanding for a school resource officer program. And in many ventures, you don't know what you don't know as you start going into these types of arrangements. So what you have, and I've used the word housekeeping a lot in the last 15 minutes, that's what this in essence is also, to bring about to address the practicality of hiring school resource officers, and then also the utilization of those officers. In the original document, there was to be one full-time officer, and then several part-time SROs that would float back and forth between between the 5 elementary schools. We have had difficulty recruiting part-time officers, and I think what the school system would like to do now, and all of this is at their expense. All of our elementary school SROs they are funded in their entirety, salary and benefits, by our school system. So, and conversely, the high school and middle school SRO, they are funded entirely by the city system. So what they are asking is the original agreement was structured so to be one full-time and several part-time. They would like to see 2 full-time and then as many part-time as they can fund going forward. We certainly don't have an objection to that. We are, and as most police departments, we have recruitment challenges also right now. I don't know of any police department that has an abundance of applicants right now that once they get through the vetting process, that can fill all the vacancies that they have. And this has become a real challenge for law enforcement, especially at the local level across our country. But in any event, this would allow some flexibility there. We have provided one full-time officer for the elementary school, for one elementary school. We have one candidate working through the pipeline on the part-time side. We will, after the first of the year, make a second applicant or a second full-time position. We'll transition to the SRO. We have made several appointments in the last month that will send young officers or new officers to the academy to be certified for our patrol use. The other piece of this deals with how they can be utilized. And there will be times in which there will be a school-based, elementary-based SRO that the school may not have a purpose for. Well, they're all patrol-rated officers. They've all come through our academy, the full-time officers that are used as SRO, and could be redeployed to doing patrol work that we would need them for. Our original MOU did not address any of that. So that this SRO amendment number 1 addresses the practicality of what we really need to make the program work. Are there questions? And if not, we'll place this on a consent agenda. Like I said, it's not a large item, but it is a matter that the MOU was approved initially by council. And so any amendment to that or change of how we're doing business going forward requires city council consideration also.
You know, hopefully somewhere down the road in our lifetime that, you know, this need could go away. You know, it's very sad that, you know, that all communities and cities need to provide police protection in a school. But I know it's just a way of our times, and just, again, it's just a sad situation.
I would say that we began a while back, so not recently with this. And I think that community policing programs that started quite some time ago, great emphasis, and that actually that's positive. And also having our officers in schools can be a very positive to develop those relationships and also some mentoring and helping to demonstrate career possibilities. So I think some of it is positive regardless of the safety aspect. I think it's a very positive relationship that we can have. So
I would agree. And I taught, we had DARE officers at the time, and they were there to build relationships with students. And while I understand the safety aspect of an SRO in all of our schools, there is still that, to Margaret's point, that relationship that is built for a lot of our children who perhaps don't have a male role model in the home or a female role model, depending on, you know, who's assigned to the schools. And so while I understand the concern, Malin, I completely agree with you. It's sad to think that we've got to need an officer there for the protection of our children. On the other hand, we can find the positive in it that they're there to build relationships, and they could be lifelong relationships. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, anything else from anyone? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to city manager's comments.
Yes, Mayor, let's talk a little bit about our meetings that will start in January. And I'm going on the assumption that the governor will extend our ability to meet remotely. And I'm assuming that City Council would want to continue with that practice on the January 5th meeting to meet virtually as we have in recent months. We also have our January 26th work session. And I think based on previous discussions, there is a desire to do that as an in-person meeting, picking a location such as the gym at Slater Center, which we have identified as large enough to conduct a socially distanced meeting, but also satisfy the desire to be able to have a day-long work session. This will be the kickoff to our budget season. We'll have a number of presentations, some with staff, some from outside of staff, that will assist you in conversations that you all will need to have not only that day, but as we move further into the budget session. That day will start at 9 a.m. and we'll have some food throughout the day. It will be more box lunch type things, once again, taking into consideration the status of the virus in our community. Some of the individuals that will be there outside of our organization, Ms. Donna Whitaker, property assessor, has indicated her availability to be there to meet with you to talk about the reappraisal year. 2021 is a reappraisal year for Sullivan County. She'll talk about that process. She'll also talk about the impact of TIFs that we have. And then also there are, I think, 4 commercial properties that have appealed their assessment, some of which, if they're successful, can have a significant impact on our property tax revenue. She'll speak to those issues. She'll speak to, hopefully we'll have some sense at that time as to the timeline in which those appeals will be heard in Nashville, what the strategy is of the property assessor's office, and how we might deal with an outcome there. I've also been in conversations with Hospitality Tennessee to have an individual from their organization here to talk with you about the different structures of the DMO, or the Destination Marketing Organization, as council continues their dialogue regarding the funding of the marketing of tourism. We'll also have some staff presentations, not only dealing with budget and finance, but also dealing with things like impact of the casino and how we need to be thinking about the impact of Bristol, Tennessee in the coming years once that's open and running. So we'd also like to, and you have your comprehensive plans, hard copies of that. I think between now and that point, I would encourage you to leaf through that document, highlight it, make notations of those areas where you feel like the city needs to be on the forefront. That's essentially a 20-year document that lays out the blueprint of what Bristol should be pursuing over the next 20 years. That's a 35,000 foot document. You have a number of 5,000 foot level documents, and we'll provide those to you electronically in the coming weeks. So you'll also have an opportunity to revisit those documents for those of you who were on council when some of those reports were done. And then also our two newer members council, an opportunity for you to familiarize yourself with those reports. Because once again, those are more granular in terms of looking at projects, looking at project costs, and what you feel like are important pieces for us to deal with first. And that includes a school facility study. So those are some of the conversations that we want to have during that day. It's normally a pretty full day. With that, I'd like to ask John Luttrell to talk to, once again, update council on the status of the marketing pursuit or the marketing project that he has. He brought council up to speed 3 weeks ago, and he's going to review with you essentially where this marketing plan is going and the financing piece of it. This will also require an appropriation from City Council at our January 5th agenda. So with that, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. Shora. As he mentioned, the conversation has been ongoing since the last time that I spoke to you all regarding this project. So I did just want to give a quick update on what the plan is looking like and taking shape as for this community livability marketing program. Just a quick reminder, the objective that we understood from council was to leverage those funds that had been earmarked for marketing activities to develop a campaign in order to showcase our community assets, specifically our 10 gigabit fiber network, which of course was just upgraded to a 100 gig backbone successfully last week. So that's even more information to share. The goal is, of course, to spur population growth in the city, focusing primarily on those professionals that are seeking opportunities for remote work in a more ex-urban environment where they can get essentially more bang for their cost of living dollar. Looking at the messaging, we will deploy our existing branding in a very intentional manner, focusing on the connectivity, opportunity, and livability that our community offers. As we're putting this messaging together, there has to be some sort of an emotional connection to the brand. That's going to be critical to this project being successful, and that clear call to action. Now, in terms of how to convey this messaging, we had looked at doing some television advertising in certain markets outside of our area. We have been working with the professionals at the High Road Agency. Many of you, of course, know Matt Bolus and Lori Worley. They're intimately knowledgeable with Bristol, with our community, and also have considerable experience in marketing our community to the broader Southeast region. So they're the professional agency that we've been working through to make some of these media buys in these markets. In terms of television, we'll look at a flight of ads running from January 15th through about April 30th. One of the markets we'll see these ads in is going to be in the Nashville, Tennessee market. They're going to be securing some broadcast space on WKRN, which is the ABC affiliate in that market. We'll have 20 to 30 30-second spots through WKRN. We're also looking at about 40 to 50 30-second spots on some of the cable outlets in Nashville. Those will be primarily targeted toward news and business channels. That's where we're going to see the placement of those ads. The total estimated impressions in the Nashville market is going to be just under 2.5 million on that January 15th to April 30th flight schedule. Looking at the Atlanta market, we're going to be buying some time through Fox 5. Again, 20 to 30 spots on broadcast. The broadcast time is considerably more expensive in Atlanta than it is in Nashville. So a few fewer cable placements at about 30 to 40. But when you look at the total estimated impressions, we're about 3.3 million estimated impressions over that time period. This represents an investment of about $52,000 for the television component of the project. That is all encompassing for the securement of those time slots. After the television really before the television concludes, it will dovetail into a digital campaign where we're going to look at some social media ad sets. Those are going to have some varying focuses. It won't be one same ad that runs constantly from March through May. We'll look at some ads that focus more on the telework opportunity and fiber access, some that focus on our education assets, certainly quality of life, and the video ad that will run in those Nashville and Atlanta markets. They're going to be targeted to the same kind of area. So the idea is that someone sees the ad on TV, then they get that message reinforced when they're scrolling through their social. The good news is with the digital is it is far more flexible than TV advertising is. So if we see maybe we're not getting the exact same kind of response that we would like to see in our analytics, we can tweak it a little bit midstream far easier than we can with a traditional media buy. The total estimated impressions in this market is just under 2 million via social media. So pretty similar to what we're seeing in terms of the TV, if not maybe just a little bit less. We're also going to look at some programmatic video. Now these are going to be the video ads, so the same thing that is shown on TV. There's different types of the programmatic video ads. You'll see the in-stream ads, which is where you watch a piece of video content on the internet, and you'll have either pre-roll, mid-roll, or post-roll. What that refers to is where in your content viewing experience does that ad pop in and essentially interrupt what you're watching. So pre-roll, it's before you see your video, mid-roll somewhere in the middle, and of course post-roll at the end. The outstream video ads, those are the ones that as you're scrolling through, let's say a blog or a news channel, you'll see the little video pane that may appear on the side and start displaying a video. Those are the outstream videos. And then the interstitial ads, those are the ones that actually take up the whole frame of the web page that you're using for a period of time and display the video ad. The programmatic video does have some pretty limited inventory of all the programmatic display ad space, so static ads, what have you. The video, there's really only about 1% of that space that's devoted to video. So that's why working with partners like High Road, who work with some of the folks like AdX, or more commonly known as DoubleClick, they make sure that our ads are seen in those premium locations like your, major news outlets, some of your major sports facilities or sports outlets, those kinds of things. The estimated impressions there is not quite as much, about 112,000, but with that limited inventory, that also makes it very competitive. So the exposure there is a little bit more conservative. The total price tag on the digital component is about $22,500 as proposed. Then with all this, we have, of course, the call to action. All of the ads, whether they be TV, digital, et cetera, will direct to a new portal-style microsite that I discussed with you all at the last work session. The domain for that has already been secured. This should go without saying, but it will, of course, be designed responsibly so that whether people view it on desktop or mobile, it will function well. That should go without saying, but we've all seen examples of people's sites who don't work well when they look at it on a phone instead of on their laptop or desktop. The elements on this microsite will include, of course, info on BTES's fiber capabilities, our quality of life elements, relocation resources. Certainly, we've begun the discussion of how to showcase the types of housing that are available in the community as well. So that's part of the conversation we've been having as we design this page. Education resources available. Certainly, we'll link to our school system as well as our higher education institutions there, and links to existing economic development resources that both the city, BTS, and networks already have available. The other advantage to this microsite is it does provide us with some more opportunities for search engine optimization. So if people are looking for remote work destinations, we have more of a chance of them putting their eyes on Bristol through this campaign, and there's plenty of analytics that are available. The development of this particular site has a price tag of about $4,200 worth of investment. So total project budget, the $52,000 for the television, the $22,500 for the digital, and the $4,200 for the microsite development represents a total of investment of $78,700 as proposed. City Council, of course, had $49,000 worth of uncommitted marketing funds that the desire had been expressed to put toward this project. BTS has agreed to partner on this project and make up the difference with that proposal to the tune of about $29,700. So it's something like about a 60-40, 62-38 partnership on this particular project. that was very quick overview of kind of where we're headed. As Mr. Soar mentioned, there would be an agreement for that professional service that would have to be entered into at the January 5th meeting. I do look forward to showing you all the actual ad itself. We're still in development of that, but we'll have all of the ad creative elements in place by that January 5th meeting, since the target is for them to begin running really within the week or so after that on the 15th in those target markets. So very much excited to roll out that new microsite and to show you all that ad creative at that meeting. But in the meantime, I'd be certainly more than happy to answer any questions.
So you're not going to tell us the name of the microsite till January, right?
I can, but I kind of hesitate to spoil the surprise until you can see the collective of everything and how it ties into the messaging that we have. But certainly, again, the domain has been secured. That was the first thing we wanted to reach out and grab before it disappeared.
Great.
I appreciate all of your great work. I think it's important to do the comprehensive presentation, as you've suggested, January 5th, so that we see how it's all interconnected, and we'll look forward to that. I appreciate the fact that there will be and needs to be an emotional buy-in to what we're trying to do. I know we had talked a lot about some other ads that we had seen, and once you have that initial emotional click, I know statistically speaking, you engage very intently to the information that's shared. And the fact that it's anywhere from 15 to 30 seconds makes it an even more focused engagement. I think it's a great job. Can't wait to see it.
Ditto.
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 All right, and with that, this is our last meeting before the holidays, so I wish all of you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, Happy Holiday Season.
Thank you, Bill. We'll move into City Council comments. And if I may, I would just like to go ahead and talk about the white elephant in the room. I know we just received an email requesting a motion from the county mayor. At this time, I don't feel like that making a motion is the right thing to do. We definitely need to have dialogue of what the intent of this is. We need to understand where this is going. I know this similar activity was tried at the last networks meeting. Also, the same day, it was an attempt, or was pushed through at the First Tennessee Development District by the Washington County Mayor, Joe Grandy, which there was a couple of parties that was privy to that meeting that voted against it, and we were both from Sullivan County. So at that, I'd like to open this up for some conversation.
So,
Margaret, I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
In your going through the final presentation of the Blue Ribbon Task Force movements information, do you have a copy of that Blue Ribbon Task Force report to share with all of us so that we can see what direction it's going?
So I think that first there was the report, then there have been several meetings since then. The report, everything that I have gotten is in pieces. It is not, I have not received, Bill, you can help me out. What we normally would get in hard copy would be even a bound with a spiral or something report, or digitally where it's a document that's one PDF that goes from beginning to the end, and it would have a table of contents. And I think some of those parts exist, but they're all separate pieces. So what I saw, I had to open different parts to be able to look at it. And I'd have to go back and find where that's accessible online. So
yeah, I think they were tasked with doing a comprehensive report, Margaret, if I recall, and
I think
Today,
we've
that's
asked
not-
a couple of times for that to be put together into a report, and we have yet to receive that in a easy to read document. So, and I don't know, I can't remember. Probably we have some notes from, like, Malin was with me at the Greenville meeting where we did talk about using the First Tennessee Development Foundation as a vehicle. And I'm not recalling right offhand if there were notes that followed up from that meeting to have in writing what we discussed. And some of it was drawings, which you do when you're brainstorming, et cetera, for looking at what the structure might look like, et cetera. So,
yeah, they never presented
I
any
have to go
follow-up.
back and see if if we received minutes from that meeting or notes or whatever.
I don't think we did.
So I'll take that the answer is no, you have not received a comprehensive compilation of all of the work and information that's been collected or shared. Nothing's been shared.
During my time as mayor and going
Mayor,
to,
haven't received anything either.
No, sure have not.
Malin, can you share with us what the proposed motion is?
I think I'll read what was sent in by Richard or to Chad and forwarded to us. The motion reads, the Bristol, Tennessee City Council authorizes its representative on the board of directors of Networks Sullivan Partnership to support a statement of endorsement by the Networks board of the ongoing project of the Blue Ribbon Task Force, exploring the benefits of a regional partnership in all areas of economic development for the 8-county region.
Mayor, before we get too far into discussion, let me remind council that we're in a work session, so we could not have a formal motion second and a vote.
True, that just the reading of what the document.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not advocating any motion by no means.
right. No, but that would be what this would be inclined to authorize, might be inclined toward a motion.
Right.
I would just, with the publicity we've had and that there has been, that for sure where we are, where they are with things are a lot further along than what this statement is being asked for us to do. This looks like it would have been something appropriate earlier on, but now there's a lot more details that are out there. Which if that's what is wanted to support, it needs to be stated as such. So,
well, it's also my understanding that the Sullivan County Commission has not been privy to all the information that's been discussed. I also understand that yesterday's meeting with the Kingsport Board of Aldermen, it was not a very positive meeting in regards to any support for this.
I think for me, and I've got to step off here in just a second, I'll just say that listen, I'm willing to take a look at anything. If, from my standpoint, if it's something that is going to benefit Bristol, then I'm willing to look at it. But at this point, I mean, I guess I have more questions than I have answers, and I just like to get some more information on the specifics and the details. And it's like the devil's in the details. I've had more information. I think I've just got a lot of questions and would like to, sit down and go over all these, I don't even know that the document is finished yet. I guess from our call on, what day was that, Friday or Thursday? I don't believe there's even really a document out there that exists. I'm not sure. I mean, once again, that's a question that I have, and see that document of before we put a vote of support. Not to say that, we wouldn't if it's the best thing that is for our citizens and for Bristol, then sure, I'll take a look at it. But I just don't know that we have anything right now for us to make to make a motion on for our next meeting. So that's kind of where I am.
I just wanted to, I tried to do a little bit of work. I was, of course, unable to get on the Zoom meeting last Friday, so I called Richard directly to find out exactly what it was about. And he gave me, I think, the same information that you guys got in that Zoom. And I have talked with a couple of aldermen in Kingsport, and I think they're in about the same situation as far as information goes as the Bristol Council is. I think we can all say, now this statement that Richard sent over is one thing, but we can all state, and I think we have stated multiple times, that we are certainly for regional collaboration and to move our region forward in a positive direction. Something like that, I have no problem in saying yes to. I think everybody's saying the devil's in the details. How many times have we heard that in the last couple of years? There has been specific documents put forward starting 2 years ago. I would say that Networks was the initiator, and Mitch from NetRep was in collaboration with Clay on that document. And it got down to specifics, especially about the roles of contacting the state about traditional economic development. We've seen an MOU from NetRep. We had a response from Networks on another MOU, and things haven't worked out. Neither entity agreed to it. As far as Networks goes, as far as our city council goes, as far as the county commission goes, as far as the city of Kingsport goes, and I'll include Bluff City as well. My opinion is that if we make a statement about regional collaboration, we all need to agree to the same statement. And that's what I mentioned to Richard last week when I spoke with him on the phone. That's what I've mentioned to our counterparts in Kingsport. And that's what I believe. And I believe that Networks should be making that same statement as well. A simple statement of belief in regional collaboration, I'm fine with, I'm a yes to. It's a general statement. The main thing that I'm concerned about, and I want to make sure that we're careful about, is that we are at the table when these negotiations, when these initial boards are formed. And I don't want us to be on the outside looking in. And that's kind of the way things are trending right now, is that things seem to be moving forward. But no one that I'm aware of, besides our county mayors, are really aware of. So for me, again, I think we all should be singing from the same hymn book, the same statement, and it can be a general statement if we want. But I think that statement of regional collaboration, we all believe in. I don't think there's anybody in any entity that doesn't believe that. So I'm fine if we want to make up something in our own words and share that with Networks, share that with Kingsport, share that with Bluff City and Sullivan County and whomever, share it with the world, because I believe we all think that. I really do. But my main concern is that we are included in the conversation about how this goes forward in the future.
And I agree with you. I think we had an attempt with that with our memorandum of understanding that Clay was trying to present to NetRep and that group. It's hard to have that good feeling when you've got the mayor of a county publicly, making comments and statements that he's got a secret handshake agreement with someone to come in and oversee and run an operation of this magnitude. So there's a lot of that effort and activity that those guys or some of them's doing that's behind the scenes that is just not the right way to conduct business, in my opinion. And I don't think I want to be a part of something like that.
I'll just say that I do think that some of the movement has been toward more of coalition as opposed to the original thinking. I think there was more of a hub that would be in charge of everything, but that's not even clarified, but it appears that that is, which I like Chad said, I agree. Regionalism is where we need to be. It's where we feel like we are headed, as painful as it is to getting there. But the coalition of different existing organizations that we already have makes more sense, and then fill in where it's needed for additional work. But y'all have said it great for being part of that conversation. We know transparency is critical. We know that our experience with City of Bristol, and Bill, we thank you and your staff and previous city managers coming before you and previous city councils, that professionalism, transparency, trying to do things the ways that are the most professional possible. That's what we're used to, and it's difficult when that same standard doesn't seem to be applied.
Yeah, it's hard to gain that confidence, when two entities try to present an agenda item without even putting on the original agenda for things to be considered or reviewed, and bringing it up at the last moment. That's just not professional at all.
And Margaret, to your point, I would refer us back to the conversation that we had on Friday when I specifically asked, are we moving towards coalition building? Are we moving towards a coalition of collaboration? And was told no, that it was not a coalition, that it would be a standalone, that it would not be housed in the First Tennessee Development District, that it would be a standalone entity of governance. And so while I too would appreciate a movement towards a coalition, it was made pretty clear on Friday that they were not driving towards a coalition. Because I asked the question with you in mind, realizing that both would feel really good about working towards a coalition.
Well, I think it also may, some people may define it differently in their minds. I mean, whether it may, we don't know because we haven't been filled in, but the existing structure of First Tennessee Development District may legally not be appropriate, so that they have to form a different. I don't have a problem if that's the case. I don't have a problem with it not being housed at First Tennessee Development District. I don't have a problem with staff being specifically dedicated. When you do coalition work, somebody has to be in charge to herd the. So I don't have a problem. The problem is we just don't know, because we have not seen anything in writing. And again, it makes sense for networks to retain identity. It makes sense for Meta to retain identity. It makes sense. So, and I'm not sure that that's not part of the plan, but we don't know. So
to your point, I agree. Collaboration across the region, we have talked about it for 2 years. We have been very purposeful and meaningful in our conversations about how important it is to collaborate, coming and going with all entities across the region. Y'all have heard me say oftentimes before, I believe in carts and horses. And I don't believe that we've ever seen many carts pull many horses. And we don't, it was mentioned about bylaws, but there but that it's already gone to the point of developing bylaws. We have heard about the quiet, unbeknownst handshake to a CEO, potential CEO. We've been told that there will be a CFO and that there will be a CCO. Well, there are all of these bits and pieces, but we would be voting to vote for this particular resolution. We would be voting blindly for something that we do not know exists or exactly how it exists. So I think, to your point, Chad, yes, a general statement of we believe in working collaboratively across the region. But based on the information that we have, I don't think we can go any farther than that. We don't know what's in the Blue Ribbon Task Force, what their outcomes are. We don't know. I just think we're being asked to put a cart in front of a horse, and I'm not prepared to do that. A general statement, Chad, I would be prepared to do, but to agree to a resolution or whatever that is as expensive as this one is, I don't think we have enough information to be able to support that.
I think we all agree that we believe in regional collaboration. Is there anybody that doesn't agree with that? I think
we show that a lot with a lot of projects we've done and are doing. So yeah, absolutely.
And we've sent a statement through to networks vis-a-vis that states that very clearly. And so I think that what we have all said that we agree to, we have made publicly known.
Well, okay, I'm asking that. So my next question is this: we do have a meeting coming up with networks on Thursday, a called meeting about this. I think that 3 words, maybe it's 4 words. We believe in regional collaboration. We're okay with that. Do I get that? I mean, I don't think anybody disagrees with that.
Well, I think the meeting on Thursday is perhaps, its timing is not good because the county commission won't have an opportunity to even speak about this until Thursday evening. And when we talked about all of this, you'll remember we said that everybody needed to have time to go back to their legislative bodies to discuss this. So for us to meet in called session on Thursday is premature. But yes, to your point, yeah.
I agree with you on that. That was, if that's the only reason for the meeting, I see no sense in wasting the time for that meeting if we're all on the same page for that. Number one. The number 2 question is, and anybody's input on this, is it not reasonable for the city of Bristol, the city of Kingsport, the city of Bluff City to publicly ask for details to this point on exactly what's going to be voted on or put up for a vote amongst the Northeast Tennessee Development District, if that's where it's going for a vote, that we ask for details on that. Is that something that our 3 mayors, our 3 city mayors could ask for? Is that unreasonable, or is that opening up a can of worms? What's thoughts on that?
Malin, would you like to speak to what has been shared with you to date?
To date, there's been 0 shared. I know that Mayor Venable and Mayor Grady went off somewhere together to try to write a set of bylaws that they're putting together. Has been shared. There's nothing been shared. But I agree with what you're saying, Chad. I think that the 3 cities, Bluffville, Bluff City, and Kingsport, or 4 cities, us. Yeah, I think that would be great to see what they're proposing. I don't think we'll get that or anytime soon. I know they're trying to establish with the bylaws to present it to create a new 501c3 nonprofit. It's separate from the current First Tennessee Development District Foundation. So I think there's a lot of pieces of this that it's not being shared with us.
It's fair to say, and our Kingsport counterpart have said that we're getting information out of the newspaper, like the general public.
True.
I know Malin, serving as mayor, it takes a lot of time, but I'm almost wondering if it might not be worth your time to contact, the other two mayors and have a joint letter, a public letter that asks for specific details to this point on exactly what they're working on, exactly what they're thinking about, exactly the details you just now mentioned. We've seen in the paper.
Sure. I mean, there's no problem doing that. I know Mayor Schul would be very supportive of doing something like that so he can report back to his board of aldermen. They deserve that answer. We all deserve that answer. If they would be willing to present us that information, that would be great. And I have no problem in trying to lead that charge to seek that information.
Having spoken with one of the aldermen last night after their work session, I think what they expressed is in tandem with what we're expressing today. I think they went so far as to say that, they've been very patient. They have, entertained, as you said, Chad, regional collaboration. At some point, we have spoken to this over and over and over and over again. And we've responded. We've had situations where we've shared and there was no response returned. How long do we keep going down this road if we know about where we're willing for this road to go? First question, just a rhetorical question, something to think about. I don't have the answer. But secondly, do we need to have the called meeting at Networks if we've already, made clear that we support regional collaboration, period? Do we really need to go back down this road again?
I see exactly what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying. Again, I just want us at the table at the front end, and of course, we're looking in right now, and
right.
Just paper what's going on. So
we haven't been at the table at all. Let's just be honest. We have asked to be at the table, and we have minimally in this process. Now, not with the Blue Ribbon Task Force, but in this process specifically, when we have asked to be included at the table. Even for our mayor to be included, we were invited to a couple of Zoom meetings, and then we were not invited to any others. And so I think it's important for us to have representation at the table. I absolutely do. But I think that our representation at the table needs to be our mayor and not reliant on only Networks, because we as a city have a vested interest along with Networks. But that's my only question is, do we need to enter into another called meeting where the conversation is the same? I mean, we keep saying the same thing over and over again.
I checked my email and there's nothing about a called meeting on Thursday in my email at this point. So y'all can check to see if you've received anything. But I would say that the regionalism and trying to figure out how to get it right, I think is critical for our future. I mean, I agree with that. So, and also understand writing bylaws that's very difficult to do as a committee. But if you outline and you have if you have input and you've outlined what kind of structure you want and how you want to have it operate, then putting that into words is not, you follow that. And that's where we haven't had, we're not clear because we haven't maybe we had some input into it, but it's never been fed back so that we understand what that structure is that's going to be placed in the bylaws. We've read some in the newspaper about 11 members and some different things, but we didn't get that back to endorse that and say, yes, make the bylaws from this. We'll look at it after you make the sausage. We'll look at the sausage or whatever. But anyway, that's.
Margaret, it's my understanding that the two county mayors have and are meeting with an attorney to create those bylaws with no involvement from anyone else.
Yeah, or there may be involvement from other people, but we don't know what.
Well, I mean, no one that I'm aware of.
Right, right. And again, what was the process identified for working together? So,
as far as the meeting goes, there was an e-invite from Miss Abby that sent that out. I have responded back and told Clay and that I will not be in attendance to this meeting Thursday.
I guess I didn't get on that list then.
Margaret, it was sent on Thursday, December the 10th, and it did come from Abby Meese.
Yeah.
If you would like, I can forward you the Zoom invitation if you would like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say, if you would talk with the other two mayors and see if they're in agreement about a joint letter.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no downside to that, if somebody, Bill, if you see a downside to doing something like that, or Danielle, anybody, other council members, whomever, if you see a downside to it, let's cut it off now and don't do it. But when you talk with those two about a joint letter, and I think that should be done as soon as possible, a joint letter, requesting the specific information, 11 board members, all of the specifics that we've seen in the newspaper and other articles. I'm assuming that'll be done here in the next, that you'll probably talk with them and then, later today or tomorrow, and just say, if you're in agreement, there's no sense for a network's board meeting. And so let's all request that we do not have the meeting.
Yeah, I'm afraid if we go into a meeting there, there's going to be expectation of a vote, and that's not good.
I will say
I'll reach out to Pat this afternoon, try to get hold of Miss Wells, and ask them that specific questions.
I support what Chad has proposed.
I will say this also too, that in Richard's information that he sent me, he said that he was not going to be making a motion for anything. So I think if Bristol and Kingsport singing from the same hymn book, let's just don't waste the time Thursday.
I mean, he didn't say that in here unless I've overread it somewhere, missed it.
That was in a text.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Well, then I'm confused. Why did we get a copy of the resolution of that, or the motion, if that's what's gonna?
I text Richard last night. I said, "Are we going to get something or not?" And he said that Angela that works with him would be sending that, by email, and that's what I sent over to. He said in that same text, he said, "Didn't realize you met early. We'll work on this evening and get it to you as early as possible for your review." Let's see here. Whatever you do, I don't have a network's motion at this time. That's what he said at the end of his text.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with that personally.
Well, have we exhausted this now? Do we know what, Malin, you're going to get with them and let us know, right?
I'll get with Pat and Miss Irene and see if they would co-author a letter stating what we've talked about in support, generally speaking of in support of regionalism.
I'll say this and then push my mute button. I think Bristol has been made out to not be a team player and not support regionalism and the collaboration of regionalism. That simply isn't true. We do support regionalism. I would say we were some of the founding people that practiced regionalism, given our circumstances with our sister city. We get regionalism, but we can't vote for something that we don't have a clear understanding of what we're voting for. And that's not to say that we don't support collaboration of regionalism.
And Danielle, if there's something that if it's something you want to craft for us to make sure we're not binding ourselves in any way or saying the wrong words, very open to that if council agrees.
I'm happy to craft something based on what you discussed with the other mayors. I think that you're not really at this point, the council hasn't taken any official action, and it wouldn't be appropriate to indicate that you have taken any official action at this work session because you can't. And so
Sure.
You're purely expressing the sense of the mayors themselves, is how I understand it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, any other general discussion? Council comments?
I can just was going to share, and there'll be a lot more detail, but this January will be our 4th annual Martin Luther King celebration, community celebration. And of course, it has to be different this year, but exciting group. And we're actually going to have more things going on. We've increased the number of partnerships. So be watching. We will have a program that will probably be live streamed that day at the usual time. King Faith and Culture did have a speaker, but she is postponed until January 2022. So they will have a discussion on the theme, which is Dr. King's final book, which is Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? And that will be that evening. Rivers Way, who has done some walking challenges recently, will do one that is focused to commemorate the civil rights marches, and through their Map My Walk app that they use, encourage people to sign up for a minimal amount or to do one for a march on Selma for 12 miles or Selma to Montgomery, which is 50 miles. Some book groups, hopefully. Birthplace Country Music has several activities and displays. YWCA is going to encourage service and people turning that in and posting. And there will be an art program like we had last year, where our students from Tennessee High and Virginia High submitted artwork. It will be thanks to BCM's advice and et cetera, and our technology of our schools. We will have that as an online and then hopefully displayed downtown later. And then finally, speaking of regionally, the different groups are coming together to do focus on food insecurity, which is so critical at this time, and do a virtual food drive with Second Harvest and Feeding America. So we have a lot going on and really excited about it. And it's going to be on a calendar on YWCA's website. So there'll be more definitive plans going forward, but a whole lot, and feel real positive about community coming together to do that, and region coming together to do that. So,
Mayor, I would just say it's been a tough year on all fronts, and we do have a lot of people that are struggling. I would be willing to bet that all people are struggling, whether they're struggling financially or emotionally. The longer this has gone on, the harder it's been for everyone to stay real positive. But I think that we as a city have risen to the challenges as best we can. I believe that our staff has gone above and beyond throughout this time, as evidenced today. Great catch to everyone on the tents for the restaurants and everything there. Giving Tuesdays for our nonprofits. If we haven't all made contributions to our nonprofits, I hope we will by the end of the year because they are in such need. A shout out to the Second Harvest Food Bank and all the other entities, the food pantry. And in this time of year, the most important thing that we have is our family, our health, and would like to wish a very Merry Christmas to everyone, that we go into the new year being concerned for those around us and constantly reaching out to lift one another up.
And I will ditto all of those as well. And ask that you keep those folks there in shut-ins on your prayer list. Difficult to include them in activities, but there's a lot of you've already mentioned a lot of folks out there that are hurting, but there's so many folks that are really, really lonely right now and that can't be visited by family in any form or fashion. Mm-hmm. So I'll just end by saying it has been a trying year, but we've learned a lot, and we've had a lot of people step up in areas that we haven't heard from, specifically in our health field. And so real proud of all those folks and what they've endured and the care that they have had for their patients and our citizens. So with that, I will say Merry Christmas.
Yeah, I'll just say that, to everyone on this call today, especially the staff in the city of Bristol, Tennessee, that, I'm very thankful for all the cooperation, for all the effort that everyone puts out every day. I think our community is one of the greatest communities across this country. And I think as a community, we show this in care that, we express to so many people every day. And, and we fight hard for our community. And I think if we didn't, then, someone else needs to be in these seats. So with that, I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and look forward to a happy new year and a whole lot better new year than what we've had this past one. So thank you.